MIDDLEKAUFF! Hey, hey!
What's up, everybody?
That's me doing the McGlinchey.
Welcome. That was John throwing himself out of the frame. It is Sunday night. It's great to have you. It's great to be live on YouTube. If you are watching this live or not live, awesome. Thank you. Check out the podcast down in the description below.
What do you think about this half-baked idea I had?
Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel.
Last week, every team you beat in the NFL playoffs, you get to pick one player off their team to keep rolling with you.
That's a good one. Who would you take from the Cowboys?
Micah Parsons.
And the Seahawks? DK? Feel like you could use them? Or?
Yeah, no, I don't know if that's a great.
Shanahan would be like, "Give me Kenneth Walker."
Yeah, exactly. Give me their swing tackle.
49ers beat the Cowboys 19-12. Will this be known as a classic in the history of great Niners-Cowboys games? Time will tell.
Time will tell.
You win a championship, this goes down as a classic.
Didn't they always say that the catch game wasn't a great game? Or was that a different game? Or some famous game?
It's a good question.
There's out there in the ether, like whenever you're talking to like a Greg Papa, and you're talking about the final part of the game, he's like, well, actually.
You're like, it's the greatest moment in NFL history. You're like, well,
Jordan was 3 of 25 before that last shot. Or Montana had throw 4 interceptions. You're like, okay. Shows you no one gives a shit, right?
No.
You just remembered what's the final score, how it ends.
19-12. I think I'll remember this final score. This is the kind of final score you remember, Well,
will you remember that final play?
I will. John, so this week we did a full breakdown of all of McCarthy's fuck-ups from last year. And at the end of the game, they had the moment where they ran out of time. That gets all the attention. But we went through that stupid play the Cowboys ran last year after they successfully picked up a first down on a fake punt, and they tried to leave everybody out there to force the Niners to take a timeout, and it cost them 20 seconds and a delay a game. And you said that might be the second dumbest play behind only the McAfee Colts Pagano 2-man punt play. And then the Cowboys pulled that sucker out at the end of their season. Incredible.
But even Greg Olsen is really good. When they punted back to the Niners, he was like, hurry up. You can steal a couple plays. Hurry up. And they're kind of like lollygagging. Dalton Schultz, a Stanford guy, fucking went to Stanford. Doesn't drag his foot, guy. Doesn't drag his foot.
Doesn't drag his toe. I don't get it.
I saw multiple NFL people say, when in doubt, always drag. When in doubt, always drag. It's just I think it gets embedded into these guys, especially the Power 5 guys. But once you get the league, we've been to practice. They just do a lot of random shit on the side with their coaches.
Drag flag, yeah.
That was, how do you, that laissez, just like, what are you doing there?
Well, you're halfway there.
Yeah, just the laissez-faire nature of the whole thing. I mean, what are we doing?
Laissez. I think laissez is a good way.
Yeah, the laissez.
I'm just feeling laissez today.
It's a laissez move.
I think he'd given up on the game. He'd given up on the game. He knew that if he had dragged his toe with 5 seconds left, he knew the play they were going to run. Dalton Schultz knew they were going to line up with 3 wide receivers split right, 3 offensive linemen split right, 2 Jeff Schwartz's split left, Dak ineligible, snapping the ball.
No, like Zeke snap.
Sorry, Zeke. Like it's pickup. But
who's ineligible? In fairness, eligible and ineligible on that play are kind of irrelevant once you go rugby, right?
Sure. Yeah. I guess.
I looked at Maria and said, this thing's about to get weird. I said, this thing's about to get weird. She's like, I don't understand. I'm like, well, they're just going to do some crazy rugby. I've never seen this formation. And then he's immediately tackled. Like, didn't even, balls in his hands, Jimmy's lighting his ass up.
There was an immediate blitz on Zeke. Somebody blew by Zeke right.
It was Fred. Fred got destroyed. Fred destroyed Zeke.
Did not count to 5 Mississippis before he rushed, which is bullshit. You're supposed to count 5 Mississippis after Zeke snaps it.
Well, here, really quick, before we dive into the podcast, and I'm not blaming D'Amico. It's a tough spot. There's no right or wrong answer. I get he's got 75 interviews on Saturday and Sunday leading up to the Cowboys game. He's got a lot on his mind. good game by the D'Amico Ryans of the defense. So he came prepared. His unit was ready. They were the main reason that the 49ers won today. Why can't you just play normal defense in some of these late game situations instead of like 2-man rush here? Like, well, yeah, then everyone's back like the 20 and he's just dinking and dunking. Like, just play normal defense. Just play normal defense. Maybe cheat the safeties back, but like rush your normal rush instead of like he kind of gets to go around and look up. I even think it throws the defensive lineman off. Armstead like bumps him in the end zone. It's like, Eric, this is safety.
He had just come around a blind corner and Dak was just there. I wonder.
I think it throws the whole group unit off. Everyone's being really safe.
I think Armstead thought Dak was going to throw it away. He did not want to get a late hit penalty in the end zone. I think he just thought Dak was going to dump it, and he was pulling up because he was not about to get a late hit.
It's a weird spot. Yeah, he was high. He's taller than him. You know, you don't want to hit the helmet. Give him a free 15-yard penalty like that happened in this game multiple times. Greenlaw, it's like, now in fairness, Greenlaw made a lot of plays. So
Greenlaw taketh and Greenlaw giveth, or whichever it is.
Cowboys tossed. Was it McCaffrey that got tossed? There was a couple 15 yards. They could balance each other out.
Yeah, it wasn't the 49ers' cleanest game.
No.
It was actually a lot like last year's game where the Niners could have ended the game last year, didn't. This time, Elijah Mitchell just tiptoeing out of bounds. All right, John, before we go any further, I had multiple texts from people say I could use a Tito's right now at halftime. We are sponsored by our friends at Tito's Handmade Vodka. Tito's! It's number one.
Yeah, this was a high anxiety game. And anytime you get that, you just look at your fridge and you go, honey, bust out the Tito's. Tito's sodas, Tito's and waters, Tito's with your espresso martinis if you need a little pick-me-up. Tomorrow a holiday. It feels like every Monday in January and February is a holiday, so it probably is. So if it is, have another one tonight. Our friends at Tito's sponsored this pod back-to-back. You know that ever since the Niners – or the Tito's has been on this podcast, the 49ers have made it to the NFC Championship game, guy. Ever since Tito's has been on this podcast, the Niners have been playing. They've been in the fucking Final Four. Can they get to the Final Two? I don't know, but they've been in the Final Four.
I'd say Tito's getting his money's worth, John, and we're getting our Tito's worth.
I agree.
Yeah. Tito's Handmade Vodka. It's numero uno. Ginger beer, Tito's and water, Tito's and lemonade and iced tea. Tito's and soda, Tito's and Pamp, all right, which is grapefruit. I think the French say like pamplemousse or something like that, but we call it Pamp around here. But
I think in Spain they call it Pamplona.
Tito's, run with the Bulls, baby. Tito's Handmade Vodka. It's number one. It's the best. No frills, no bullshit, just the best. Mix it with whatever you want. Drink it at the bar, have it at home, take it to somebody's house. Distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly. John, we're also brought to you by DraftKings.
Yeah, we're also brought to you by DraftKings. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. 4 teams remain, guy. 4 teams remain.
4's in
but
the
only
air.
2 can play the big game. That's also known as the Super Bowl. And the 49ers are one of those 4. Going to Philadelphia, playing the fighting Howie Rosemans, who once said, MIDDLEKAUFF, we no longer have a spot for you. We got revenge on our mind, but we got Niners at the Birds. We got the Chiefs rematch against the Bengals, lipping Mahomes. This is a fantastic Final Four. I mean, it's proven. We saw today with the Bengals winning. This is easily the best 4 teams right now. Best 4 teams, Final Four. Download the Sportsbook, DraftKings Sportsbook app. Yep, that's right. New customers bet $5 on either NFL playoff game. And they'll instantly get $200 in bonus bets deposited in your account. Wondering what you could use $200 in bonus bets for? Try out same game parlays. You know, how about little Niners-Bengals underdog parlay? Might be a little something. We finally get that Niners-Bengals game that we didn't get last year.
Yeah. You can even combine.
Sirianni, get ready.
You can also combine multiple bets from one game, like which team will win and by how much for a shot at even bigger winnings. And if mobile sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still get in on the fun with the DraftKings Daily Fantasy. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code HAM, $5 on any NFL game. Get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code HAM only at the DraftKings Sportsbook.
Niners Birds, baby.
Niners Birds. Hungry and humble. The Ricky Waters game.
Tell those Eagles we coming, as Dion would say.
I'm coming.
You want me to see if Roseman get us 2 seats?
Yeah, ask for sideline passes, maybe.
It'd probably be easier to get sideline passes than it would be to get seats. Bob
You,
Lang. Bob
me,
Lang's
Bob Lang.
the right-hand man.
Bob's probably not getting hit up by anybody this week. We should hit him
No.
up.
This is a big week for Bob Lang. For those of you that don't know who Bob Lang is, he was a longtime 49ers PR guy, most famous for when Harbaugh and Jim Schwartz have their ass pat off. He's there grabbing Jim, running off the field as Schwartz is attacking him down in the tunnel in Detroit. And also kind of looks like Big Cat, shorter version. So Bob Lang was great to Haberman and Middlekauff.
Yep, got us a lot of interviews.
And now he's Howie Roseman, Sirianni, and Lurie's right-hand guy. This is a weird game for him, right?
He's back home, though. Like, really.
Back home.
Philly's back home for him. Wow. So, I mean, so many things. We just talk about, there's some specific things to get to, obviously, but I think we left off at the end of that game after the Niners failed to, after fantastic running by Elijah Mitchell, failed to go out of bounds. Did you view that as a capital offense, an understandable mistake, not his fault at all? Where are you at on the scale?
Well, getting the first down is by far the most important thing, right? You would agree with that, even if you have to dive at the out of bounds marker. Like that's the number one goal, is to cross the sticks. And it is a play that's headed at an angle, right? It's a pitch play that hit at his angle headed toward the out of bounds line. Now, there is a spatial awareness that I think you'd like running backs to have. And I'd say the 49ers, for the most part, Debo, Kittle, Ayuk, really, really juice. Elite IQ football players. McCaffrey probably falls under that as well. Mitchell, I think we're still learning. Really good player. I'm a big Elijah Mitchell guy. I don't know how you couldn't be. I give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt.
In the game.
And he was coming on at the end. And that play, to me, symbolized like his potential impact. Like, he is a really, really good player that's every bit as explosive as McCaffrey, can hit creases, can make shit happen. I give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because I think by the time his momentum, he would have seen he crossed it, he would have had to do a leap, and his foot did touch out of bounds. I mean, he's going to get screamed at because it's the sport of football and coaches scream at you. But I don't think it's to me, the craziest offense of the entire game is Kyle Shanahan's mismanagement. And then with 7 seconds left, Purdy almost fucking it up and throwing it out of bounds. And luckily it hitting, like, they didn't even get a home field clock. That he legitimately got it. But very close.
By the way, they import a clock operator for these games.
So that's good knowledge. This isn't guy from Burlingame.
Mm-mm.
And Kyle clearly going classic offensive coordinator, sheet over his mouth, undressing Purdy. I don't know if you're allowed to undress the quarterback when you royally fucked up 15 seconds before. That, to me, is a bigger blunder than Mitchell's, because getting the first down saved them 40 seconds, right?
Yeah. Yep. It was a big play.
I would say if he's closer to the numbers and like leaped out of bounds or something, it would have been crazy. You have to admit, it's not the craziest infraction.
No, in part because the out of bounds came up on him pretty quick after he picked up the first down. I mean, I still think it's closer to capital offense than don't worry about it. All good, bro. But you win the game, so it is all good. I thought sneaky play at the end too I thought it was Jimmy Ward, but the box score says it was Mooney Ward. When Schultz picked up that sideline catch at the beginning of the Cowboys' last drive, he came flying up to make a hit inbounds and keep Schultz from going out, and that kept the clock running. So that was there's another little sneaky play.
Is Greg Olson the best analyst going right now? He nailed that one, because I was like, why are they going to keep the clock running? Your momentum has to be going forward. You're a rules nut. You know that. But
second I saw it.
See, not me. I just think he's out of bounds. But the moment your momentum goes backwards, they're not going to give you that.
You're not going to give you that. If you get stopped in bounds. So that was a big play. Sneaky Kittle getting held in the red zone was a big play. I mean, I guess not really sneaky. It was pretty. Did you catch that shot at the end right before one of the last Cowboys snaps? Maybe it was when the Niners took their time out before the Cowboys ran that play they've been preparing for. I just love the Cowboys spent practice time on that play. But one of the cameras takes like this low shot. It's called a hero shot, where you get whoever the player is, like at an angle from below up. So you look like the hero. And they pan it, and it's like the camera that kind of blurs the background, and it's Tabor Pepper. Did you catch that?
No.
It was like this big moment, and they go silent. I'm like, do they think that was Kittle, or it was a cool shot, so they took it? It was like right before the big play. Whose expression do we need? But that was a big moment.
I mean, the game almost was iced at the end when Greenlaw would have picked six. That would have been, I would imagine, in Dallas land, Dak is going to be, to me, Dak's the bigger story today than McCarthy. Would you agree with that? The picks and how devastating they were.
I would agree with that. I didn't think upon the live watch that this was quite like last year's performance by McCarthy.
They came to play. They came to play. And that defense, we hammered it home all week. We're like, well, Purdy running around from some of these teams. I think the speed of these guys is a little different. It was even more glaring how fast they were, right? Relative to, they were a step faster than I would say the last month of teams chasing them. And I thought 11, there were a couple times early in this game, that fucking guy was flying. They lined him up over Trent early and often in that game. Maybe it was just to give different looks. They talked about it on the broadcast, how Kyle told them the last couple of days, like, this guy is a completely different defensive coordinator than the guy I used to play. He's mixing and matching. Their team's speed up front was fantastic, but like ultimately Dak, throwing the pick, the defense, like, let's face it, Brock Purdy has been an amazing story. The 16 touchdowns, 4 picks in this stretch of games, but there was going to be a game that got weird, and today started getting weird, like 6-6, 9-6, 9-9. I'm like, I'm in. I'm enjoying the ugly weirdness, madness of this game. I'm cool with it. Like I was all for just being on the edge of my seat all game long, even if this is not going to be some ESPN classic,
right?
If that channel even still exists.
Don't think.
But in a game like that, we talked about a couple things, right? No mistakes, and Purdy could not have one of his roll around make a mistake, and ultimately Dak did. And the 49ers defense, who they've relied on him all season. They're the number one defense in the league, but like you and I are old enough, like we've seen some great defenses. It's not on that level. Like you can make plays on them, plays like some of the great defenses, you never hit a play. You're trying to get over the century mark as an offense,
let alone a sustained drive where you pick up 4 first downs.
They don't exist. But the Niners capitalize on turnovers, playmaking, and I think those 2 linebackers. Like today was not, I looked up a couple times, this guy's story of coming back. He had a bad injury in training camp, Tyron Smith. Remember, it was like right at the end of training camp, and the Cowboys were freaking out, like, what do we do? And he battles back, and he comes back at the end of the season. He's been a left tackle for them, a Hall of Famer for his entire career. He's like, fuck it, guys, I'll play right tackle. And I looked up a couple times, like, he was just right there with Bosa. And it was like, God, there's probably a war going on up there. And those linebackers, I thought they were all over the place. Greenlaw had the one late hit. I'm sorry, I can kind of live with that. Well, Jimmy had the late hit last week, and it sucked. But it's like, look at him today, flying around, crushing people. If you're going to have your hardest hitters, like they're going to live on the edge occasionally with some of these hits that in 2000, like if they would have played in the 90s, they never would have got penalized right now. It's right. It's just part of the referees are naturally looking for it. It's a point of emphasis in the league. I can live with it if you're going to fucking crack people, and they do.
Yeah.
And they were cracking people all day long.
And I just crack people, but make plays in space. Like to me, that's
I don't mean
Greenlaw
like
and Alshire and all those guys. Like Alshire had some good tackles in space. Like you just trust them in space. Greenlaw had a big tackle on, I think on Zeke on it led to like a 4th and 7. So no, he was really good. The Zeke hit was really late and out of bounds, but we've seen Greenlaw do that before, and we've also seen Greenlaw make a bunch of plays in games where he has some penalty. But the Niners only had 3 penalties in the game. Dallas had 7. The Niners they had 1 turnover. Ray. Dallas had 2 picks.
Can you show up to the game in a tricycle and fumble the ball?
That I feel like that when you end up catching a line drive punt at your dome, it's always a little. Was that a punt?
It was a punt, yeah.
Yeah, it's always a little dicey. Niners special teams coverage, dicey. There were
he did get the ball. He got it though, and then went down. But
I've been saying it all year, John. 2 hands when you're running between people. I don't understand. But then he breaks off a 53-yarder on his next return. So
I think one thing, like as looking back on this game, because the Cowboys are clearly pretty good. I mean, they are, when the dust settled, one of the better teams in the league. The Bills got their ass kicked again today to end the season, but they're also pretty good too. You can lose in this round and be a good team. Their depth compared to the Niners, though, is not as deep. Because when they lost Tony Pollard, and then all of a sudden he's getting carted off, and you're clear like, that ain't good. And then they come back at halftime, and he's out for the game. The Niners could not have had one injury, maybe Trent Williams or Bosa, that would have felt like that. But none of their skill guys, if they had rolled an ankle and left for the game, you would have felt as devastating. Is like, I thought, putting myself in a Cowboys fan, like, we're in trouble.
Would that be the last guy you want, or would Lamb be the last guy you want?
Yeah, one of those two, but like those are their two better players, and it's clearly like Schultz against these linebackers isn't just running free, right? So his impact on the game was not, what we had kind of hyped him up. I mean, he's a good player, but what did he do today? I guess he had 5 for 27, but
Lamb had 10 for 117. Yeah, they felt, it was funny watching them after watching like the game this morning with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, is they feel like they're 2 skill guys short. Now, maybe Pollard, if they have Pollard, they only feel 1 skill guy short. But you really feel Dallas being short a receiver, another tight, just whatever, another back, something.
Well,
right?
would Zeke play for the Niners?
No.
He just wouldn't play. He can't run. And I have a lot of respect for him as a player. When he came in the league, he could catch, he could run between the tackles, he was fast, he would run you over. But he, to me, is a throwback of what happens to a lot of running backs most of our life. They just hit a point. Sometimes it happens at 26, sometimes it happens at 29. You're just like, is this the same guy? And they're just slow. He's just slow. And that's why when Tony went down, the spread of their offense, it doesn't exist. Because you had to kind of account, even his speed today, and we said, like, and I believe this, that the Niners matched up pretty well against him, but you could feel his speed. Like, he just, he threatened you, that Zeke just doesn't threaten you. When he got an edge, like that, an extra 5 yards or get a first down, didn't, like you talked about that play that Greenlaw made just in the flat. He was clearly, him, Mitchell, McCaffrey are on a completely different level speed-wise than Zeke. Like, Zeke's going to get cut this offseason. Like, is Zeke a year away from being just out of the league? I know he had 12 touchdowns, but is he a fullback? Maybe he could change to that, but who even uses fullbacks? Kyle's like, well, you try you out.
Yeah. He could be in camp with the Niners. I could see that.
He's their new, like, the Fresno State guy that transitioned. Didn't they take a D lineman and move him to fullback? I think he got cut.
Okay.
Problem is, use checks on another 5-year contract, so he ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, they cut the juice, and Aaron Andrews is like, he told me, I've been in the league 10 years. My quarterback hasn't played 10 games. And they go, and Juice has the iPad, and he's drawing on the thing. Sitting next to
it was a Harvard guy, a Stanford guy, and Purdy. I think it was Juice, McCaffrey, and then Purdy were sitting there on the bench.
Do you think Christian would have been in the game? That was Elijah Mitchell's spot anyway, right? To kind of ice the game there.
I don't know.
McCaffrey came in when Shanahan decided to throw a bubble screen.
Clearly, one thing with McCaffrey, he's dealt with stuff and he plays through it. Like, his toughness has, maybe in Carolina he didn't finish games, or I'm not saying he wasn't tough in Carolina, but he gets nicked up, but it doesn't phase him to coming in and out of the game. He might miss a series here and there, but he does not go to the locker room, which I think was the concern of quote unquote an injured player. I mean, he gets banged up, but he just throws some contraption on it, does a couple stretches, and then comes back in.
All right. How about Brett Maher? How about the pregame scuffle with Brett Maher? Did that get the Niners a point? Did you see Robbie Gould? For those of you who didn't see, there was a little, not scuffle, but they were just trying to get in his dome. And Robbie looked like he kind of felt bad. And he was trying to escort Trent Williams out of the way. Like, come on, man, be nice. This guy, he ain't got it. This is not the way to do it. We don't want to win like this.
I've watched a lot of Animal Planet in my day. and the one thing with Animal Planet, they spend a lot of time on the alphas of the jungle, right?
Yeah.
The things that kill everything. The lions, the jaguars, the crocodiles, and the hippos, and what they do to everything under them in the hierarchy. And when they see an injured or limping gazelle or moose or giraffe or zebra, anything, even if they're not hungry, they're going to establish their dominance. And when you look at the two guys that fucked with them, it wasn't like some random Ray or Danny Gray running into him. It was Deebo Samuel and then Trent Williams screaming at the special teams coach. Now, I don't think it's random that those two guys lead the team out of the tunnel. They're two of the better players, not just on the team, but in the league, went after that guy. And I think you're right, because we saw Robbie Gould talk to Golf Channel this week, and I'm like, oh, what's he saying? And he was protecting him. Like, hey, I've been there. It's a hard thing for kickers. I think kickers kind of stick together a little bit like closers in baseball, or it's just goalies in hockey. It's just kind of a little unique club. He was the only guy defending him from the 49ers, like two big alphas who were clearly trying to kick the guy when he was down. It'd be like a lion, gazelle. I'm not even hungry, but I'm just going to kind of hit you and bite your leg, you know? I'm not even going to eat you, but I'm going to fuck with you. And you saw Bones screaming at Trent Williams. In fairness, pretty risky. And Jimmy mentioned it on the broadcast right before the game. They asked him, like, would you have taken him? He's like, I would have at least definitely ran a tryout. And I was listening to
somebody in, they said during the broadcast, another kicker.
The guy that missed a bunch of kicks last year for the Chargers, they added him to the practice squad. But I heard someone this week, I was in the car, and I forget who it was, someone associated with the 90s Cowboys. And he was kind of offended that they didn't like push Maher. He's like, Jimmy Johnson, I don't know if he would have cut him, but you could bet 100% that he would have had an open tryout on Monday or Tuesday, just to be like, this is not for shits and giggles, guys. This is the second round of the playoffs. And on the Fox pregame, you could tell Jimmy was like, the ship ain't going down because of a kicker. If it goes because our pass rusher or a quarterback, but a fucking kicker, it was pretty risky for the Cowboys to do that against a game that turned out to be 9-9 the majority of the game. It's a tight spot where the Niners have a guy who's never missed a playoff kick in his career. He's 40 years old. Now, he missed a lot of playoff years with the Bears, but he's played in a lot of playoff games now with the Niners. You could argue, if you just like said Robbie Gould for the 49ers has never missed a playoff kick. That'd be pretty impressive, right?
Right.
Let alone his entire career.
And then you're in a game where, do you think Mike McCarthy would have gone for two if he'd scored a touchdown when they got the ball 3 minutes left?
You text me that, and I said, shit. I mean, luckily they got to 4th and 10 pretty quick on that drive, but I mean, it would have been on the table.
Well, I feel like they have a play, you know, like they definitely would have had a play that they liked. And I thought them around the goal line, short yardage, they didn't get there a lot. Dak's legs, we saw it last week. We saw it this week. I feel like they would have had a play they liked. Now we didn't have Pollard anymore, but I don't know. We didn't end up in that predicament, but I thought he would have thought about it.
One thing, and I mean, we're going to have all week to talk about this game, but the Cowboys probably should have taken more deep shots. I mean, the Niners got hit on it last week. They got hit on it again this week. How are the Eagles? Jason Kelsey's gone on record saying he's the best guy I've ever seen live throw a deep. Jalen throws a great deep ball, and they got two big-time wide receivers. I will be stunned if they're not throwing multiple deep shots in that game. Because the one thing you would say about the Niners, like, their safeties aren't speed guys. And Lenore, hell, I mean, Charvarius gave up one last week against DK, so
he got beat at the end of the game by Gallup, and Dak had some pressure in his face, but
underthrew him.
Bad throw. You're right. I mean, basically got tested once down the field, twice. There was CeeDee Lamb down the seam on Fred Warner.
Do you know T.Y. was wide open like 15 feet to the left on that play?
On the Fred Warner play down the middle?
Yeah.
No.
Where it went off CeeDee's hands. Now, Fred was right there. It was a really, really hard play, but T.Y. is wide open. I would imagine in practice, you're hitting CeeDee. Like, T.Y. was open. And that speaks to what you were saying. You know, they're depending on T.Y. Like, he plays a lot with Noah Brown. They're a little undermanned for a good team, right? I feel like their defense is more potent than their offense.
They are a defensive team. I mean, there's no question. If you said, all right, you get you're team X. You're just a team. You don't have an offense or a defense yet. You get one half of the Cowboys, and you got to build the other half yourself. Which half are you taking? You would take their defense. I mean, that's a playoff. An average offense is a. By the way, D'Amico held him to less points than he held him to last year. Now they were a better offense. Maybe I thought as this year went on that Dallas was a better team this year, but maybe in the end they weren't. You know, I
think their defense was definitely better. Their offense was not. And we also took Tony Pollard out in the middle of the game, right?
Yeah.
Or early on in the second quarter, or whenever he went out.
Yeah. Early. Six carries
for 22 yards. So yeah, it was going to be tough sledding for him.
2 catches.
I mean, he's just a huge part of their offense. He's their second most. Him and CD are their potent players.
Let's talk about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, 2-0 in the playoffs. Did not throw a touchdown pass. 19 of 29, 214 yards. No touchdown passes. No interceptions. 3 carries for 8 yards, including a designed run in the red zone. I believe it was a designed run.
I think it was too.
So what do we think about Brock Purdy's game?
Well, on the most
Dak did, which was turn it over.
On the most basic level, he outplayed Dak because he did not give the ball to the other team. And if he had thrown 2 picks and Dak's no picks, like that's the difference in the game. Because the 2 picks led to 10 points, guy. His first pick led to 3 points, and the second pick led to a touchdown drive. So that's a devastating, like, turnovers in these big games destroy you. I would say Purdy really almost only threw the one almost pick, and it was deflected. The one that got tipped at the line of scrimmage, kind of went over Ayuk, and Diggs, who had like 27 interceptions last year, went right through his breadbasket. I think early on, their team speed was an eye-opening experience for them. And in fairness, like, they were beating the shit out of Brady. Like, their front gets after you. And he did a couple of his 360 keep plays alive that you're like, oh my God, man. One thing I will say he's good at when he's getting chased, because he's going to get chased again. Like, the Eagles have Reddick, Sweat, Hargraves, Brandon Graham's a backup. Like, they got guys that can rush the passer. He will throw the ball away for the most part. He does not, when he does his 360, sometimes Jimmy throws it inbounds still. He will throw the ball out of bounds. So I give him credit on that. It did feel like he was holding on for dear life early in the game. And clearly in a game against a really good team, for them to be potent up, they have to have a run game. And they didn't get a run game in this game till the end of the game, or toward, the second half of the game. And I thought he started making really good plays. He was hitting guys. Even the play with Kittle, like, might have been a couple, 8 inches off, right, to be a perfect pass. But he's hitting guys in stride, making plays. I thought in the second half he really calmed down. They could rely on him to make some big passes. On basically the final drive, he hit a couple huge third down plays. Really big third down plays.
The McCaffrey throw and the Ayuk throw.
Yeah, I mean, really, really good third down plays.
And the McCaffrey play ended up being a little more, I think there was a little more traffic than there should have been, because one of the defenders fell down right in front of Christian.
Today was much more like a Jimmy Garoppolo day than some of the games he's been having, right, with the several touchdowns. And one thing this is where I think Kyle was always complimentary of, like, Jimmy did what we need him to do, was good on third down, and he was good today on third down. I think they were 7 of 14. And like the ones you just mentioned, those 2 plays in a big spot with the game on the line, that keeps the clock going, gives you a new set of downs. It's just enormous. And he's hitting these guys in stride. The one McCaffrey play, they clearly ran it for him, and he fucking throws. The one DB was supposed to be somewhere else, almost tripped into him, but he hits it right in his numbers. It's just a perfect pass.
How about the long throw to Jennings on a third down?
Fantastic. That was a devastating blow for the Cowboys, because that led to a field goal, didn't it?
Yeah.
That was a huge throw by Brock Purdy.
We obviously if you're listening to this, we're live right after the game, as you probably know, but so we haven't heard what Kittle or what anybody said post game. Somebody just DM'd me and said that Shanahan said that on the juggling Kittle catch, it was an ad lib by both Brock and Kittle, that it was not part of the play, whatever happened. So something to watch, something to review this week. But
is that an Iowa to Iowa State connection?
Yeah, it's an Interstate 85.
Yeah, just got it going on.
Print a T-shirt. Yeah, I thought he made an adjustment to get rid of the ball faster on those. There was one play late that was really kind of I don't know if it was late, but second half where he was doing the turn my back and try to make, and he normally will turn left and try and do it again. And this time he just turned out and just chucked it, got rid of it. I thought he adjusted to the speed of the defense, like understanding that there was not a lot of time. He pulled one down and ran late. I think was it on the last, it wouldn't have been on the last drive, maybe on the second to last drive when they eventually kicked the field goal to go up 7. It was 3rd down and 10 after he threw the ball at Debo's feet. Then they have a 3rd and 10.
What was that?
Well, I don't know. Debo clearly turned around. Like Greg Olson, did you hear what Greg said? He said he thought that Debo had forgotten that it was for him and then turned back around.
But why would he have turned down after one step? I think he knew. I think he was mad. Like, we can't call this play against this look. That's what it felt like. Because how would Debo have ad-libbed that unless they were screaming like, turn around, and he turns around?
Maybe. Yeah, you're right. It might have been. There was an offensive lineman 12 yards downfield.
A lot of moving parts on that play, and it was not moving in a correct direction.
Well, no. But then it's a 3rd and 10. On the next play, Purdy just gets out of the pocket, steps up, picks up like 6 yards, and then Robbie Gould hits the field goal. So, I'm with you. I thought he handled things pretty well. Philip on the stream says, how about Brock not trying to do too much? QB1, he's earned it. Was there ever a play? I mean, maybe we'll talk about the Shanahan responsibility at the end of the first half where maybe he tried to do too much. He did eventually get the ball out of bounds. Was there ever a play where it felt like he tried to do too much? I don't think so.
I think to piggyback what he just commented is he was getting destroyed early on. The Cowboys were winning at the line of scrimmage in the first half. Their defensive line, Parsons, they were flying around. It felt like he had no time to pass. Was it the second play of the game? Like the design kind of random pump, quick screen thing got destroyed. Sometimes when you destroy people in the history of the league, since you and I have been watching enormous football games, college and pro, a quarterback who isn't up to the moment against elite players on the other side will kind of wilt. Like, it's a long-standing way of football. Some guys, the majority of guys, can't stand up to the heat in the biggest moments against the best players. I will give him this. He can. He is not scared because he was getting peppered. It did not look pretty. And his body language really is pretty good. He never looks too down, but he also never looks too high. And I think there's a steady Eddie to him that, because today, and Jimmy had a little of this too, is just he can just get peppered over and over, and he just kind of keeps, unless he breaks a bone, which happens to Jimmy sometimes, he'll just keep showing up. Yeah. And like there are some quarterbacks, and I know there's a team that used to play in the Bay Area who says, sometimes their quarterback can go into the tank, and I think this is always a knock on Cousins. Some of these guys make, $30-40 million. That you start hitting them that they kind of wilt. It's like, what are we paying this guy? These are the moments. Like I was thinking about this with Dak. You're paying all this money to get it, to just play at a high level. Yeah. If we lose, it's not your fault. So be it. But like, we're paying you 40 fucking a year.
This is where legends are made.
And I just think there's an element to Purdy's game of being unfazed by the pressure is the wrong word, but like legitimately getting hit and being chased by these guys that are really, really good.
Yeah,
like
that is not the pressure of the moment, but the actual flying bullet human beings.
Yeah, the speed of the team that you're playing. Like I would say
he had not played a game like that yet.
Not even close. I think the separating factor for why so many guys in quote unquote his shoes, not even Mr. Irrelevant, but just a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, let's say, like in a 120 pick range, they get thrust in the situation on a really good team, start a playoff game or a late season game that's must win. They usually suck, right? Against a really good defense. It's just like, God, this is too much for them. It doesn't matter if they're playing with Jerry Rice, DK Metcalf, Jamar Chase, and Randy Moss. It's just like, they're just overwhelmed. And he might feel overwhelmed for a play, like it doesn't look pretty. But as the game goes on, like the totality of the 60 minutes, he always kind of rises back up. Where you're like, oh, he just looks like a kind of normal quarterback again.
Well, what's the saying? Like, you don't let a mistake beat you twice. He hasn't made a lot of mistakes, but he also doesn't let. I think that's what you're saying. He doesn't carry anything negative with him. I thought Greg Olsen made a good point. There was a play where Brock rolls out left and throws it away, and the quick replay is Kittle dancing with his arms wide open, swinging his arms. And Greg Olsen's like, yeah, I mean, your quarterback's on the clear other side of the field. His point was just, I know it's going to look like Brock missed him. That's not what happened on this play. I thought that was a pretty good moment from Greg, because he's like, yeah, the guy's 60 yards wide the other direction based on the angle. He's not going to get you the ball. This is not the moment for him to turn, pivot, and like back across his body all the way across the field.
There was a moment in the Bills game when Diggs was going nuts, and Romo's like, you know, he looks at Diggs originally, then he goes through his reads, then he gets chased. He's like, you don't start going back through your reads after you run 30 yards to the left. Stop. You're like, I'll go back 1, 2, 3. You know, it's not the way it works. I know it looks, and we focus on that when the guy's going like this. He's wide open. Well, yeah, he wasn't wide open when he looked at you, and then he had to run for his life. Kittle, and this is the thing about the 49ers, like, I don't know if you saw, I just saw on Twitter, like, Diggs got all his shit and left before even Sean McDermott and the coaches got back. He just threw out his pads, grabbed his shit, and then a player came and grabbed him and brought him back in the locker room. The 49ers are pretty good about when a play gets really fucked up, that, like, and you saw it with Debo and Kittle on multiple plays, like that screen with Debo and then the Kittle one where he's wide open. It never carries for a play or more than a play. It never feels like they start screaming at each other.
No.
And I would say this is true with Jimmy, with everybody. They're pretty good at just kind of move on.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like some major freak out, like, Purdy, where were you? And maybe they yell immediately. Kyle clearly does, but it ends fast.
What was the play? Was it the Seahawks game where Brock kind of threw it behind him? He almost threw the pick I don't know if it was almost a pick, but he was trying to get it to Ayuk at the goal line, and Brandon maybe stopped, and he threw it, and it kept going into the end zone. And the immediate reaction shot of Purdy was kind of yelling at Ayuk. If you watch it again, the next play is maybe Ayuk came off and he's jogging back on. Purdy just kind of says something to him as Ayuk jogs by. And I think it probably comes from being coached by the guys they get coached by, right? Shanahan coaches us like a certain way. D'Amico, I'm sure, is no bullshit. Kasarik, like, there's not a lot of space for ego to get in the way of being corrected. Comes from leadership, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, never for a moment. It does. I mean, Purdy does verbalize himself. It's not like he's a mute as a quarterback, right? Like, he does seem to do the things that leaders do. Wheelie says he has literally the best team around him. He ain't playing for the Jets. LOL. Yeah, and his job on this team is to get the ball to good players and not make mistakes doing it. And he does.
I would say this, though, that the 49ers offensive line is not bad. And you saw today McGlinchey get tossed by Micah Parsons. At one point in time, I look up and Brunskill is screaming down the field. And I'm like, wasn't Burford? Burford got benched in this game, clearly, because he was getting smoked. Now, they rotate throughout the year, but I was looking at Matt Barrows tweeted this out during the game. Like, this is the second straight series for Daniel Brunskill. This is not normally. They usually flip off. They give him one series. I think it's because someone probably in the box is like, the right guard is having some issues in this game. And rightfully so. It's a rookie right guard from UTSA against the Cowboys could be overwhelmed. Like, it's very possible. And I thought tonight Brock is running for his life. Like, there was a major difference throughout part of this game. The 49ers have one elite offensive lineman. Banks a good player. Burford has some moments. He also gets benched or rotated, however you want to consider it, throughout the entire season.
Rotated.
This is not basketball. You don't rotate guards. Like, when you look at all the other teams, like Tyron Smith is like, he just rotates out. No, you stay in the whole time. The 49ers rotate guys out. McGlinchey got tossed. Now, Parsons is, I'd say, easily, if Bosa's the best, the second best. And honestly, it's probably like a 1A, 1B.
I don't think after watching this game, you could say he's second best. You know what I mean? Like, he's right.
Yeah, they're equals. They are elite players. They are premium players. They are game wreckers. They are difference makers. So that could happen to any offensive lineman. But PFF, listen, I'm not trying to beat up on McGlinchey, but when you play the best, Micah Parsons, next week, I'm pretty sure Hassan Reddick had a fantastic year for the Eagles, and they obviously have a lot of bodies up front. He is a liability in the pass game. And the 49ers are at their best when they can run it. Well, in the first half, they could not. They had like 20 or 30 yards rushing.
PFF has him for 19 sacks. I don't know if that's the official stat because their stats are different, but Hassan Reddick.
He's an awesome player. And to me, McGlinchey is a liability in the pass game. He's good in the run game. And when they can run the ball, the pass game is much easier for him because you don't know what's coming. But that wasn't really working today, right? And they got into some, when you get into 2nd and 9 and 3rd and 11, it's pretty clear what's going to happen. You're going to drop back. And that is advantage for the best players. And the Cowboys and the Eagles have them on the lines. So I would say next week, I mean, I would imagine, I'm not trying to get ahead of ourselves, but I don't know if it's going to look that much different up front these 7 days, this game and that game, right?
Right. I mean, we talked about it the other day, but Philly and Dallas are number 1 and number 2 in pressure in sack rate, percentage of dropbacks that result in sacks. Dallas was 8%, Philly's 11%, number 1 and number 2 in the NFL.
They get
That's part of playing this time of year.
Yeah.
Right? It's part of being in the Final Four.
The best defensive linemen and they got an unlimited amount of them.
It's actually, when you really take a step back and think about the
49ers too. I think the Eagles will say all week, like, they got one of the best defensive lines in the league, right?
Well, Dallas feels, actually, the more you think about them offensively, like such an outlier compared to the teams that ended up, or the teams that always end up, in kind of the Elite Eight. When you just think about all the skilled guys that are on the field for the Bengals. And I know the Bills maybe aren't quite the Bengals, but just the multiple pass targets that they have plus their quarterback. What Philly has on the field is ridiculous. The Cowboys feel closer to the Giants than they do to the Bengals and the Eagles and the 49ers from an offensive talent standpoint.
But their defense, their defense is.
No, I understand. No, 100%. I understand. I'm just saying, like, you're going to get that defense again with a very different off. We'll see what this week. We wondered, would you have to throw for 280, 300 yards to beat the Cowboys? The answer was no. Okay. So that'll be part of the conversation this week with Philly. Can you slow them down? They just scored 38 on the Giants, the way you just held Dallas to 12.
Jalen's a better player. Jalen's a better player than Dak.
Right? Jalen's a better player. He's a better athlete. He has 2 number 1 receivers, right?
Yeah. They have a ton of
the
running
receivers
backs.
Left in the playoffs are just ridiculous.
It's crazy.
All-time great. I mean, truly, like, the greats of their eras are in the final.
Well, I'm watching Jamar Chase today. I'm like, is this what Debo would look like if you meshed him with Ayuk? Because that's what he
just
feels
like. Slimmed down, if he was a little thinner.
Yeah, but could run guys over and can run routes. And is it possible to slow this guy down? Is it one of the great scouting jobs of all time when Joe Burrow pounded the table, said, I want Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell?
Penei Sewell? Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think about that every time I watch the Bengals.
But the Lions don't regret it either. Like, they like their player. I know he came after them, but
yeah,
it was a great pick.
This is actually a perfect transition to talk about Kyle Shanahan. One other Brock Purdy throw I wanted to point out was the play after Parsons tossed McGlinchey. That was a 1st down and 10. That was the end of the half. Niners get the ball with 2 timeouts, 1 minute and 15 seconds, 28-yard line. They hand it off to Debo. Then McCaffrey gets no gain. Then Shanahan's going to pack it in, but then he's not because they get a 3rd and 1. Then Parsons tosses McGlinchey. 2nd down and 10 was Juwan Jennings catches the ball when it looks like there's nothing. Purdy actually held the ball for a second on that one. And Jennings, who, again, just has like 2 catches a game and they're both huge, gets out of bounds with 12 seconds. I would call that a clutch throw because you were about to not get points. Dallas was going to get the ball first to start the second half. They ended up not scoring, but it felt like getting points was going to be really critical. And that was a really clutch throw by Purdy in a late half situation there where he had to help his coach out because his coach was kind of giving up.
Yeah. And that's why you could say at the end of the game, the end of the half, when he throws it, with 7 seconds, if you wanted to be critical of Brock, like situational awareness, but that's a tough position for any quarterback. Cause if you don't have any timeouts, if the play fucks up, you got to get rid of the ball. but you got to be careful not to just throw it into the ground to get an intentional grounding, right? And having taking a big go back and not be able to hit the field goal. Tough spot. I text you immediately. I said, I wouldn't. It's not that I don't trust Purdy. I just don't trust this situation against a really good defense. Take it out of your quarterback's hands. Just kick the field goal. Then you can do a squib kick with like 3 seconds, right? You would be able to do it because there's not enough time. Like Robbie Gould kicks a field goal. Let's say there's 2 seconds left. Then you could just squib it or whatever, or pop it or do whatever you want. But I thought, I know Purdy got screamed at by the coach, but I didn't put that as much on Brock in that situation. I think it's really hard. I think it would have been hard for Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers. It was just because all of a sudden you get pass rushed. You got a clock ticking in your head. You got to get rid of the ball. Like that's the one kind of negative of the day, like that kind of moment. And I don't think it's even fair to blame him. I just think it's a very, very difficult spot for any high-level quarterback, let alone some rookie in that spot against a pass rush that can get after your ass.
Yeah,
you could have got sacked.
It's a good point because you wonder, like, are there things that he still needs to experience and learn, and you just coach him as if he knows everything, maybe, right? Like, I don't know what Kyle said in the headset, but he has only played the amount of games that he's played, the amount of snaps that he's played. There probably are some spots where being a young quarterback will show up. And maybe that was one of them. Olsen made the point too, the ball has to hit the ground. It's not when the ball hits. I thought it was when the ball hit anything, but it's not. It's when the ball hits the ground. So the guy reached up and touched it, then it hit the ground.
So wait, if it hits
like if he had thrown it too high and it just like gets to the stands eventually or something. I mean, if it comes to rest on the bench.
What if it hits like the box that the equipment guys runs out and then bounces up? It's
up. I don't think it's down. I think he's right. Like I think it's got to hit the ground.
That's pretty crazy.
So, but let's talk about Kyle Shanahan's game. We could start with that. Shanahan, end of the half. Shanahan's whole first half. It was not Kyle's best game. Now somebody tweeted me and said, "Well, you got to give credit to the Cowboys defense." 100%, you give credit to the Cowboys defense without question. You give credit to the Cowboys defense, but what was going on at the end of the half it was pretty confusing. I mean, I understand you don't want to give Dallas the ball back, but you got to go get points. Like they don't just give themselves to you.
Well, especially because I guess I would somewhat understand it. Honestly, I was confused when Dallas kicked off in the second half because I was like, well, Kyle knew he was getting the ball at a half. That's just what clouded my mind. No, but it just in my mind, like, what are you doing? Like, why would you waste time when you have consistently been pretty aggressive with Purdy? The other thing is, if you had been at like the 10-yard line, backed up and had to go 90, would have kind of got it. But weren't they close to the 40-yard line? Like, you're right there with an offensive repertoire of dudes everywhere. You got a million plays. Like, I understand the first several drives when they're getting crushed in the run game. It's hard. You're feeling each other out. I have no problem with like trying some different shit out, it not working. I'm not even crushing the play calling, even though it clearly was not working. That's football. It's high-level football. It easily could happen next week. It easily could happen in the Super Bowl, and you could win it all. It could easily happen next week, and you lose. Like, it's hard against the best teams with the best players. But situational football, like, you can't control, let's say, like the first couple series. You have this play dialed up, like a backside reverse to Debo or some play to Christian, and it doesn't work. You've prepared for it. I know you've worked all week. Like, you're not calling this play because you think it's not going to work. You've done the work. They've proven like they are a good offensive coaching staff. Not everything's going to work. I'm fine with that, even though it's funny to make fun of it on Twitter. Situational football, though, in that spot to run the clock down and then to call a timeout after like 25 seconds wasted off, I thought was insane. And then ultimately it almost cost them because it put yourself in a predicament where time was not on your side. And then for you to undress the quarterback, and I'm all for like coaching people hard. I've had several people DM me like, hey, I just watched Coach Prime on Amazon Video. Like, he's an old school, like, in guy's ass. Like, he is not some like just like freewheeling it. Like, he's not like it's not. I think a lot of people think he's like a player's coach. Like, he's on guys' ass. Not the easiest guy to play for, I think, in terms of his standard. Kyle's the same way. But Kyle, you created the crazy situation. Like, you put him in the predicament. So didn't it look like he was yelling at him? Like he was really, really mad? Like, Kyle,
yes,
you fucked up. Like that was on Kyle to call the timeout and waste 25 seconds. Borderline inexcusable. And I know you've always been someone, and I agree that like clock management is clearly more difficult than I think we all think it is on the sideline when we're sitting on our couch with whatever food we ordered from DoorDash or DiGiorno pizza, fucking cheese spilling all over us with a soda, Gatorade, or beer. But like that situation was pretty, like he knew what he was doing, and I thought it was crazy. So did everyone. I mean, it was
played
nuts.
with fire. He played with fire is what he did, right? He played with fire because he didn't want Dallas to get the ball back. 56 seconds, I think, basically they run a play and they call a timeout with 30 seconds. So it was 20, like you said, 25 seconds basically. They let off the clock, but then they get the first down on 3rd and 1.
They always do, guy. They always do.
I know. It was a lot of people were joking, and it was appropriate. It was kind of the Garoppolo play sheet. Did Greg Olsen say during the game that Kyle told him he was going to be conservative today?
I didn't hear that. No.
Yeah. I thought they spent a lot of time relying and if you're new here, like I think Kyle Shanahan is pretty well. There's no debate anymore about whether Kyle Shanahan's a good football coach or not. But I did think for playing a fast defense, they spent a lot of time relying on misdirection and trying to get things going side to side, where the horizontal game it's not going to work as well against a team that's really fast. And Dallas had some stuff done. And again, part of it's Dan Quinn's really good and they got good players and all that. And I think the other part, if you're going to give Shanahan the benefit of the doubt on just kind of the big picture play calling, they really are. It's such a cliche, but with them, it really is a 4-quarter game. Like they're going to run and run. And I had no problem when McCaffrey was picking up 2 yards, 2.2, whatever it was. They ran for 27 yards as a team in the first half. I had no problem with them continuing to run the football because more often than not with them, it bears out that it will work over the course of 4 quarters if it's going to be this type of game. I thought when the offense did really get in a flow before that, they get the ball after a couple of drives if nobody's scoring, and they got in a flow. And to me, it was just because they popped the run, 5 yards. Now they hit some throws and Kittle made the great catch, but they just really committed to the straight ahead run game without a lot of Debo backfield bubbles and, horizontal plays that I thought were a little misguided because of how fast Dallas
was.
Well,
it works. It works as long as the game's close, right? As long as you're not down 10 or you're not down 7.
I don't know. You can't waste a half against Philly next week. Probably.
No. And to me, it worked in this game because they were up 16-12. Or they were up a touchdown. Dallas kicks a field goal, and then they go on a 13-play, 64-yard drive that almost 8 minutes. And they get the ball.
It was tied at 9-9.
No, this is in the 4th quarter. So it's 9-9. Then the 49ers go on a touchdown drive after a punt.
Right.
And they go up 16-9. Then Dallas gets the ball back. They go and they kick a field goal. And they're up 4 points. So the 49ers get the ball back up 4 points with 11 minutes to go in the 4th quarter. They go on a 13-play drive and they kick a field goal with 3 minutes left in the game. And that was where they just started imposing their will and running down their throat.
See, I thought they started doing it on that.
I agree.
On the first drive you talked about, because that was that was a first down run. Kittle makes the catch. Then it's McCaffrey through traffic. McCaffrey a run. McCaffrey 7 yards. Mitchell a run. Mitchell a run. I mean, it's 5 straight runs.
So you wear them down in the second half in a tight game. And this game was tight, and they did, and the Cowboys couldn't score. So obviously in this individual game, it worked. And, I don't want to say they tapped out. They ran out of gas, right? Short rest, 49ers imposing their will. It's just not many teams. We talked about it this week. Like, is it a good or a bad thing that the Cowboys pass rushed 66 times? And I think you said, well, not every pass rush is equal, right? There are some pass rushes like in a 19-19 game or a 7-7 game in the 3rd quarter. You're giving it your all. There's another one.
Gas today.
Was exhausted because every pass rush in this game matters, right? So you may only drop back to throw 30 times, but you're like, my 30 reps would have been crazier than a blowout where I'm repping 47. So I don't think it did. But I think the Cowboys, just from they had been on the road a lot. We had talked about that leading up this week. That game last week was weird. The travel, that they wore down, and their offense ultimately let them down. Because the defense today came to win a fucking playoff game, right? The Dallas Cowboys defense showed up to win a playoff game and played winning football, just like the Niners did. The Niners offense played winning football in the sense that they did what they had to do. They executed, and they did not make a mistake. The Cowboys' $40 million quarterback did not do the same. He fucked up. And you could argue some of their players did too, right? I mean, Dalton Schultz, just the details weren't there. They had an injury that came against them. But, like, I think, Kyle, this is a classic old school game. It was going to be ugly, going to be a defensive battle. It kind of was last year, right? Even though the Niners were up several scores, it's not like 30-3. You know, it was 23-7. Well, all of a sudden, you're just a pick 6 away from it being a tight game, and that's essentially what happens. So, you know, I don't love Kyle at the end of the half, but it's hard to, like, totally freak out because it didn't cost him. But I do think next week, you know, it was last night, Brian Daboll, early in that game, went for it on a short 4th down. And I saw a lot of people like, what the hell is he doing? It's like, he's playing an all-star team here. He knows, like, I'm going to have to score to even have a snowball's chance in hell. I don't know if Kyle's going to have to play quite like that, but he's going to have a different mindset to me going on the road against a potent team than he did against this Cowboy team that is like the poor man's version of his own team, right? Defense, make it ugly, and just even though the Niners have been scoring a lot, like, Cowboys are cool trying to win 24-17, you know?
Yeah, Cowboys got at least how many guys on their defense would start for the 49ers? I mean, they would start a line.
Diggs would. A lot of D linemen would. Linebackers wouldn't, but Van Der Esch would play.
Van Der Esch wouldn't start over Alshire, Greenlaw.
Did you hear on the broadcast that Dan Quinn thought he was the most improved guy from last year to this year?
I didn't hear him say that about Van Der Esch.
He thought Van Der Esch was their most improved guy on defense. And watching the night, you're like, God damn, this guy's flying around hitting people.
Yeah. I think the good news, like, we'll see. We'll see what Dallas does if Sean Payton.
Do you think Parsons would start over Ebukam?
I don't know. Ebukam had a big sack.
No, he did.
We'll see what Jerry Jones does. I think he should consider changing coaches, especially if he can get Sean Payton, then he absolutely should change coaches. I think the one thing 2 years in a row now, and if they lose Dan Quinn, obviously that's an L for them. But Kyle Shanahan is better than Mike McCarthy. I mean, that much we know. So I'm confident in saying that. I don't think I'm out on a limb saying anything that nobody else would agree with, but that's, just another you've gone toe-to-toe with them twice. You've played kind of the same game with them twice. You've beaten them twice. Now you lose D'Amico too, maybe. We'll see. I mean, D'Amico could take a job tomorrow.
But you don't think Mike McCarthy's getting fired, do you?
I think Mike McCarthy should get fired if they can hire Sean Payton. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's not. I don't think it's happening.
Well, then that's good for the 49ers. My point is ultimately, like, you have a better coach than them. So,
for sure.
And if they lose their defensive coordinator, they're worse.
Yeah.
Not that there aren't good defensive coaches out there, but would they hire Mike Zimmer? He's like consulting for Coach Prime right now, but he's on that staff, kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it feels like. Dan Quinn's probably going to get like the Denver Bronco job, would be my guess.
Yeah.
Feels like Dan Quinn kind of deserves another shot. I kind of like what Dan Quinn's cooking up.
I know.
He's been really not many times when a guy gets fired, you're like, yeah, just probably shouldn't have been a head coach. And then he becomes a defensive coordinator. You're like, God, I kind of want to see this guy get another shot. His defense is kicking ass. He's up there, backwards hat, looking, just
standing
representing
up
for the ball guys. Just fired up.
Standing up the whole game.
Not like a crazy ego guy that has to be on the sideline jumping up and down. And I'm not saying that's just an ego guy doing that, but like clearly, is he comfortable up there? Like it has more of an impact on the game? I guess I'm just used to sidelines. Well, I'm just used to the Niners guys love being on the sidelines, like D'Amico and Saleh.
Yeah.
And
maybe
Quinn is like Saleh, you big energy guy. I don't know.
It's like he's torn. Like he knows it's better up there, but he prefers to be in the fight. John Lynch got from the booth to the field really quick.
Incredibly fast.
How about Shanahan with the throw? Cowboys are out of timeouts, end of the game. Just going to run one more play. And you have an option. You either just run the ball and punt, or you really try to go for the first down. And Kyle tried to split the baby. He runs like a bubble screen to Purdy, Purdy's dropping down like El Duque. Purdy drops down a lot. Sidearm throws just for the hell of it.
I think but I think some guys are comfortable making that throw.
Clearly, right? And he delivered. Like, that was Shanahan trusting Brock to just execute that play, because it was not a short throw to McCaffrey for that kind of bubble screen out there, right?
Let's just do the math. If Mitchell had with one whatever, I guess they would have ran 80 seconds off the clock because they still had multiple timeouts, right? So they would have got second and third down to punt.
It
cost him a down. It cost him a down.
Cost him a down, yeah.
So it was a big 40 seconds.
It was big. Now without it, who knows? We don't get the Dalton Schultz play and all that. But I just thought that was a pretty,
because he could go. I got us 40 seconds, guys.
Do you think Kyle calls that play for Jimmy?
Probably not. No, he trusts Brock dramatically more to throw the ball,
to make layups.
I don't think the play call, even with Purdy and the offensive line kind of getting worked in the first half, was a reflection on Purdy and more just about the tenor of the game, like the ebb and flow of just, we can't afford to have something, a fumble, a turnover. This game was going to come down to, as it did, one score. Right? It was clear. Like, you're going to be hard pressed to see this game, someone win by double digits at 9-9. It was like, could 15 points win this thing? You probably would have taken 15 points coming out of half at 9-9. Probably wouldn't have, just because, it just takes one.
They could score a touchdown.
Yeah, if I would have gave you 20 at halftime of 9-9, you would have felt pretty good, right? And I think Kyle, his mindset, who leans conservative, right? Like, I think that's what he leans, is to be conservative. Like, ultimately, Mike McCarthy, when you look at the majority of his coaching career has been Aaron Rodgers and now Dak. He's a passing game guy. Like, the knock for those Green Bay teams is like, God, if they would have had more balance running the ball, he just threw. A little like a poor man's Andy Reid. Like, just fucking run the ball a little, Mike. And one thing he's kind of morphed into is kind of being this aggressive guy, right? Like, just, you're allowed to go for twos. You're allowed to go for it on fourth down. I know the Maher thing impacted today, but I just think that's kind of been they lean aggressive. And it's why they were so potent last year with them. Like, if you add Amari with CD and Cedric Wilson, like, looking back, and Schultz and Tony Pollard, like, that team last year kind of underachieved when you really think about it. Like, that was a pretty loaded squad, And you could argue did this team overachieve a little bit, the Cowboys? Because the Niners, you just watch them, they should be better if they just have, B minus quarterback play, which they're getting right now. The Niners should be better. The only way the Cowboys beat the Niners, in my opinion, is if Dak has a really good game and Brock Purdy's terrible. Yeah, but if they're around the same, the Niners over the course of a game, home or away, are just better. They have better players top to bottom.
I would say they didn't overachieve. I think they got overrated. The reason I say they didn't overachieve is, like, if they're not, the third or fourth best team in the NFC, then who is?
Well, the NFC sucked this year.
Giants, Seattle, right? I mean, Minnesota. Like, Minnesota won 13 games. 13 games. People watch them in the playoffs. I mean, they might as well have won 8, right? So,
well, like the Giants. I mean, they're 9-7-1 team. They got beat 38-7 in a playoff game.
Yeah, they were 12-5 somehow.
Seattle, like, fantastic season relative to the standard coming into the season. They went 9-8 and lost. They gave up 41 points in a playoff game.
They had one more win than the football team.
So I stand by this. I think the football team was pretty good. They just had some quarterback issues. They had a good defensive line. They had a potent offense. They just didn't really have a quarterback. They have a recipe average, though, but they didn't have a quarterback. If you just put like Purdy on their squad, maybe 10 wins.
I don't know about that.
Rivera, I don't know if you've seen the offensive coordinators. Every time I look up, it's like Bill Walsh's cousin. It's like, who is he interviewing?
Maybe he's waiting on somebody,
But that one thing's clear, like, looking at just on this ESPN.com, it has the NFC East and NFC West. Like the NFC East was the best division by far, or the NFC East in the NFC, right? Their worst team was 8-1. They had 3 playoff teams, and they had, the Eagles stumbled a little at the end, but I think start to finish, if they didn't have Jalen get hurt, they're probably a 15-2, potentially 16-1. Like that's a really, really good team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the West had 2 of the 3 worst teams in the division in the conference. The Rams.
To me, what the Eagles are, if you give the 49ers an MVP level quarterback, like what do you have? You have a dominant team. Like that's forever. The Eagles had an MVP level quarterback and a roster that looks a lot like the Niners. What do you get? You get a team that like should win every week.
Yeah.
And that's why, same thing with the Niners, like when Purdy's playing well, you have to be able to contextualize like, oh, they're not playing anybody. Watch them. Like we all understand how good their fucking players are. Like they can play with anybody when they're getting good quarterback play. Same with the Eagles. Like who have they beat? Like we all know if Jalen's playing well, that team is legit, right? And that's the thing with the Cowboys. Like I supported them a little because I respect really good defense, really good pass rush. But when you struggle to score, as they did today, and your quarterback turns it over, it's going to be problems.
Yeah. And they played Dak's best career game last week against what turned out to be a team that didn't really belong in the playoffs.
We'll see what happens this week, but the 2 best teams are in the conference championship. And I would say Dallas, when you look at the rest of the conference, would be in just their own little tier.
Neither better than Minnesota.
Yes. Like the Niners would have rather played all the other teams beside the Cowboys today. Beside the
Minnesota,
Eagles.
Tampa, Giants.
Yeah. Washington, Detroit, Seattle, whoever. This was the 3rd best team.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What else? George Kittle, big game. Resurrection. I mean, it's funny when you look at the numbers, it doesn't feel anything like career resurrection. I don't know that anyone's saying that necessarily, but
Travis Kelce had 14 catches yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I would say he plays a different game, right?
No, he does.
Travis Kelce finds himself wide ass open a lot for a guy who's a Hall of Fame player. I don't know how he's open all the time, but he's open all the time. Although Kittle got open today too, but signature George Kittle game, 5 for 95, just an incredible Kittle game.
I feel for a guy that's, been one of the best players on a team that's now been to 3 conference championship games in 4 years, you do have to produce a little at that position to be like, just get your respect at the highest level. And I think he's really done that since Purdy's come back. And now everyone just considers like, and I think Travis Kelce would like, this guy's one of the best players in the game. Like this guy is a dominant force, right? Like same with Debo. What Debo did last year, and he can do it at any, snap of a finger. It's not about like his weekly numbers now. Like I don't know what his stats were today. I don't really care. If you tell me Debo's the best player on the field in Philadelphia, it's very believable. If that turns out to happen, no one's going to be shocked, right? And I think Kittle's got that again where he can have a game where he didn't have to have 5 for 95. He has 2 catches, and everyone's like, yeah, he's one of the best players in the league. And I think he's kind of got that back. Not that he lost it, but just when you play a position that is, catching is part of it, and your stats aren't, because your quarterback play is Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, Purdy, he's been a very, very potent weapon, I would say. You really feel his presence in the passing game, and he's a dominant player with the ball in his hands. And he's just a great, like his skill level, and I think it gets forgotten for that period, like with Jimmy when he's not catching the ball that much. His skill is elite. I mean, that catch today was an incredible concentration catch for any player, right? Let alone in the spot it was in, down the seam with the guy bearing down on him, guy right behind him. His ball skills, for a guy that's never going to have, right, the Travis Kelce numbers or, Shannon, I got your back, LeBron Sharp numbers or Tony Gonzalez. Like, he is skilled at that level.
Shannon, meet me outside. Dylan Brooks numbers.
Are you allowed to do that?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, what a fucking clown.
What was that?
And pretty embarrassing.
You could convince me that the only way I would think it was not embarrassing, well, not embarrassing, but if you told me like him and Dylan Brooks, like Dylan's agents trying to get Dylan's like Dylan doesn't get enough big sponsorships. They're trying to get Dylan some more attention for Dylan. Have a little back and forth. The game's in LA. Did Shannon rant about it on? I guess it happened on a Friday
Dylan
night.
called him after the game a pedestrian and a blogger.
They call him a blog. Oh, I thought he called him a podcaster.
He called him a blogger.
Pedestrian's a pretty good thing to call somebody. The other thing with Kittle, the Niners never feel uptight offensively, but you never quite know if they're loose. And George is pretty loose. Like in the biggest moments, George is extremely loose, hamming it up for the camera, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it would be the first thing you'd pick for a player to do, but there's got to be something to be said for in these moments where it's so tight, George being pretty loose. And obviously just a big target. And if him and Brock ad-lib that crazy catch, then that's pretty good too. But
yeah, I mean, I just think we got a heavyweight fight coming, and we got the 49ers. Their best players are just playing at a really high level. Offensively, I mean, Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, McCaffrey, Mitchell's healthy. It's a potent
carried
unit.
by Juice today.
Juwan Jennings, Juice. It's a potent unit of both teams.
Well, I would say about the Niners. You're right. I mean, I would say this about the Niners group. You just made me think of it like it's a group that's used to playing this way. So if Brandon Ayuk has one catch going in the fourth quarter, like Brandon Ayuk's just going to be ready if you need him on a 3rd down and 5, right? If Kittle's got no catches in the first half, Kittle's just going to be ready. If Mitchell has 2 carries in the first half, Mitchell's just going to be ready. If Jennings has 1 catch in the first half and you got a 3rd and 12 coming up, like he's just going to be ready. They've played this way, all of them, their whole careers. Kittle's played this way his whole career. Debo's played this way his whole career. Ayuk's played this way his whole career. Jennings has played this way his whole career. McCaffrey's going to get a bunch of touches early, so it doesn't matter. And he's seen life on the other side. He knows it can be much worse. Like they're always ready. And part of it is this is the game they've played. Like they know, Jennings knows, it may be that my first catch comes on 3rd and 11 in the fourth quarter. I have to be ready for it. And so they're just always ready. There's not that you would get it this time of year, but there's no moping. I haven't seen the ball. They're just always ready.
Well, I would say this, playing for the Niners offense
with star players.
Well, the other thing is, though, I think it humbles you as a skill guy when blocking is an enormous part of your job. And I don't mean humble like it humbles. It's just part of it keeps you very grounded. Like it is demanded when you are on the edge. There was a play late in the game where Debo motioned back and stopped like right over the tight end and blocked up the middle. Now, I wouldn't call him like Juszczyk hitting the hole, but they task these guys with blocking. Ayuk and Jennings on the outside, Debo all over the map. Obviously, Juszczyk, Kittle. It's just kind of in the ethos of the offense, separate from the offensive lineman. Like blocking is something they take a lot of pride in. And I remember McDaniel on like whatever that thing was they set up a long time ago, the coaching clinic or whatever they used to do with the collective, hammered it home like how detailed we are. And I learned this early on in the Shanahan tree of the pride we take in blocking in this offense, which ironically McDaniel called 75 pass attempts for Skylar Thompson in a playoff game. But, and McVay wanted to get rid of Jared Goff so fast so he didn't have to run the ball anymore. And Kyle, you guys were frauds. You guys just pretended to like running the ball. It was me and my dad. You guys always wanted to pass. You wish you were an Andy guy. Kyle's the only guy that's holding on. I mean, even Rodgers slinging it around. LaFleur's like, fuck the run game. And Kyle's still hammering it home, And it turns out, because that's who they are, these other guys, like, I kind of want to be like Andy Reid. And I don't blame him. I'd want to call passes too. Because you know what? And this is the thing I have a lot of respect for Kyle. It takes a lot of discipline to stick to the run game.
Yeah.
It really does. And when it doesn't go right, and it easily could this upcoming week, you can go like, what the hell was that game plan? Right?
Maybe it has to be in you like from childhood.
I think it does, because I would pivot.
That patient with it and that dedicated to it.
Guy watching the game yesterday, they're like, Andy, call some runs for your guy. And he's like, pass. It's just because you don't get, it's who you are, right? Like there's no, you don't change, I think Romo's like, a tiger doesn't usually change his stripes. Maybe Olsen said that. No, a tiger never changes his stripes. Like the leopard never changes his spots. Like they're that forever. A coach is a coach. Like what Dan Quinn is doing completely just changed. Like I don't run the Pete Carroll defense anymore. I've just morphed into like doing what modern day defense. That's really impressive. That does not happen for, I bet if you check Dan Quinn's bank account, there's a lot of millions. So he doesn't, like, usually you're that rich, your ego's that big, like you do what you're great at. He's like, fuck it, I'll just learn a new defense. When does that ever happen with a coach? Very rare. Where a guy just like gets fired, humbled, older guy. I know he's not that old, but he's just scraps it.
Like McCarthy's thing was like he went into the lab for a year and came back.
He lied.
He came back with no run game.
Remember, he's like, I told Jerry I watched all the games. I lied. It's like, you're a liar.
He literally lied. He said he lied.
Yeah. He lied.
He said he lied. I guess Saban going to like a spread out offense.
But he doesn't. But he just asked you to do it. He didn't have to do it, right? He just hired people.
Right. He just knew what was hard for him to defend and got somebody else to do it that way.
Like, let's say Purdy.
Like McCarthy doesn't know the run game, which means he'd have to learn how to be a run game coordinator if he's going to involve. And his team looks like it. Sort of the Bills. The Bills look like they don't care about the run.
Well, they don't. Well, let's say Purdy had been like his first 2 years had been with Mike Leach and had a ton of success, but he transferred to Iowa State because he wanted to be a pro and he knew that like that gave him the best chance. But like Kyle's like, I know Purdy loves the Mike Leach air raid concepts. We're going to implement some of that. So this offseason he went with whoever and just studied it for
Cliff.
like he did with RG3. Yeah, he met Cliff in Thailand and he just implemented it. You'd be like, that's really impressive, right? Because it's easy to like send an assistant, like you do it and you learn it, and that's, remember Andy when they got Alex and he hired Chris Alt?
Yeah.
And he just brought him and they implemented some of the pistol stuff with him. It's just the best coaches are always evolving. And, I think, like you said, Kyle's huge advantage is he's just much better than Mike. And that's why what makes this week kind of fascinating is like Sirianni is not the play caller. Shane Steichen is, who's interviewing for head coaching jobs. And Rich Gannon's cousin, I forget his first name, but Gannon, the defensive coordinator. It's really more like D'Amico versus Steichen and Kyle versus Gannon, but also Kyle's like leading the troop, so he's versus Sirianni. But Sirianni, like, he's not calling the plays. A little McCarthy-ish, but he's a huge part of the sideline whole thing. There was a lot of Sirianni last night.
Plays in Indianapolis. Right, Frank was.
Never has. Yeah, Frank.
So
did.
that to me, like, it makes more sense to me when you think a guy like is a good leader and all that, and it's always kind of a little crazy to me when you became. Now, D'Amico would be a guy who I don't know if he'd keep calling defense. I could understand if you're like, no, his qualities are so far beyond just X's and O's. He's a great head coach. He's a leader. All that.
I read this article.
If you ever
got
famous for play calling, so that when I understand that.
I got about 2 articles in me a week from The Athletic on just something just random. It was a deep dive into Brian Daboll and how he put together his coaching staff. I recommend it if you're an Athletic subscriber or like me, still have access.
Code Ham.
And Brian Daboll talked about Wink Martindale and hiring all his coaches. It's a fascinating read how he let his assistant coaches interview coordinators. It was cool. But with Mike Kafka, I actually think he lied because he wanted Mike Kafka on his staff. He told him he was the play caller, but only for OTAs. And he said he reserved the right to take it back if OTAs didn't go right. And I wonder if in his mind, like he wanted a really good coach, but he knew he couldn't steal him from Andy if he didn't. You have to name the guy the play caller, right? If he's not calling plays. But then because part of Daboll was like, I wanted the opportunity to be a head coach. And I knew that I couldn't just be in the offensive meeting the whole time. Like I wanted to be in both. But I told Mike, like, you're going to get OTAs, but if it doesn't go well, I might take it back. Kafka did well, and he kept rolling with him. Like, that's a sneaky move that actually worked out well. But if I was Andy, I would have been pissed if Brian Daboll would have been calling the plays come week 1. But the point is, like, Sirianni was the play caller last year. Through half the season, it wasn't going well. And then they flipped it, like he gave it to the other guy, and they implemented like the Oklahoma offense, and they got Jalen rolling, and then they morphed it into whatever it is this year. I do think what makes Kyle so impressive is like he's clearly setting the tone for the team. And your assistant coaches play a big role in that too, right? You know, Kirby's speech about coach so-and-so firing the guys up. Like every coach throughout the week is at different moments gets to talk to the team or their unit. And it's a true team effort. But like ultimately the way a team comes out is a reflection of the head man. And Kyle's teams are never feels like, they're just kind of going through the motions here in a big game. But they're off, but he's also the offensive play caller. So it's a very that's tougher than just being like the CEO guy. All you're worried about is firing up the troops and timeouts and stuff. Right. So it's
but like that story you told that Joe Staley the other day said after he saw the Debo get his knee twisted, he knew Kyle was about to run the ball all the way down to the goal line, right? Like when you're the play caller, you can do things besides just verbalizing in order to have a certain emotional effect on your team, right? If you're a defensive play caller, you can start blitzing. All of a sudden now you are doing something aggressive. You run the football a lot. Now you are doing something physical.
For sure.
I guess you can get on the headset if you're the head coach and say, hey guys, I just want to run it here. But
yeah,
Harbaugh style.
For sure. But like when you're the head coach, right? Like when that image of Mahomes getting twisted and then him screaming at Burkholder, the trainer, and Andy about wanting to stay in. Ultimately, when you're the head coach, like you got to decide and I think Patrick said after the game, they gave me an ultimatum. They said, if you want to come back in this game, you have to go get an x-ray or I'm taking your helmet away right now. Patrick freaks out and goes away. But like, so you got to deal with like, that's your decision. And then you got to go back and you got to tell Bieniemy, or maybe you're calling the plays and Bieniemy, who quite knows what's going on. You see, everyone wants to interview Bieniemy for their offensive coordinator jobs, Harbaugh and some of these other guys. Like
for their OC jobs.
How many OCs also interview at other places to be OCs? Very bizarre situation. Is Andy leaking that out there? Take my guy. But it just, there's a lot going on when you're head coach and you're also the play caller. And it takes, like, there is an experience level. Like, ultimately today, McCarthy's been in a lot of these games. He's lost a lot of them, but he has coached in a lot of playoff games over the last 12 years.
Yeah.
One enormous advantage coming up this week is like, Kyle's been in a lot of fucking playoff games the last 4 years, right? And Sirianni's this is his third, and he's 1-1. And he beat the shit out of a team, but a lot of respect for him. That team clearly wasn't that good.
You got Minshew in the game.
Yeah. I mean, the Giants, it was time for them to go.
It's a really weird
and I'm not trying to diminish. Like, I think the Eagles are really good. I haven't even seen the line. I'd imagine they're favored. And they should be.
I think somebody said earlier it's 2.5, but let's see if we can.
Feels right.
2.5. Eagles minus 2.5.
So it's the first of the 3 championship games. This one, in a weird way, feels the biggest.
What do you mean by that? Biggest?
Just like has a chance to be. When the Niners played the Packers 4 years ago, or whatever.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah. When the Niners played the Packers, I think everyone thought the Niners were going to beat them, and they beat the shit out of them. Last year was weird. It was kind of house money, but they had this crazy streak against the Rams, and they could have won the game. But I don't know. Something was, Jimmy Garoppolo had a shoulder and a finger. Again, they could have won the game. This team feels better than that team. Obviously, I mean, they have 13 wins. Now they got 15 on the season. That team had 10, and then they won 2 playoff games. So this team has 3 more wins at the same point in time in the season than that team. This team's better than that team, obviously. Their DBs are way better, But this Eagles team, to me, is better than that Rams team, talent-wise.
The Rams team won the Super Bowl.
And the Rams team won the Super Bowl. But now you look at the other side, like, Mahomes has a high ankle sprain, and who knows how that's going to go. As Tony said today, he's like, it's easier to play in the game, and the next day you can't walk. So is that the biggest story this week in the league? What was he in a boot? Is he walking? Is he in crutches? Can he practice? Is he going to play in the game? Because I don't think it's a lock that he plays in the game, right? If he's really bad.
I don't think there's any way he doesn't play in the game.
What if he? Well, honestly, he can't walk or anything this week.
Chew me up, coach.
Is he? I mean, just an all-time throwback. He looked pretty good. 98-yard drive. Playoff Chad. Kelsey called him. But the Bengals, they're losing offensive lineman after offensive lineman. It doesn't faze them. It does. I'm not saying this. It's quite Cowboys, 49ers of the early 90s. Felt like it was a Super Bowl. Does have a little bit like, is it a Super Bowl?
AFC feels that way, or the NFC?
The NFC, if Mahomes is legitimately hurt. And the Bengals.
You don't think the Bengals? So if I told you the Bengals win this week, do you think they would be underdogs to both the Niners and the Eagles?
Well, what if I tell you the Bengals win this week, but Mahomes is 50%?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's because whoever, the Eagles have looked incredible this year. Obviously, the Niners just held the Cowboys to 12 points. Whoever wins the NFC is going to come out looking pretty good. You're saying there's a world where the Bengals can come out not looking as good, even if they beat Kansas City in Kansas City, because Mahomes is at 50%?
I think if Mahomes is at 50%, they won't get as much credit, and I think the winner of this NFC game is favored in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, because I think even if you're the Niners, you beat the Eagles, that's going to be very impressive, right?
Yes.
Now, Mahomes, there just may not be a world where Mahomes isn't kind of beat up, right? Kind of a legacy. Not that Mahomes needs anything for his legacy, but maybe a legacy moment Mahomes game coming.
Part of it was the Jags. If that had been the Steelers or even the Chargers with Herbert, that was a pretty legendary, just like, I am that guy, motherfuckers. Like Staubach, Stabler, Bradshaw, Montana, like the way we talk about those guys dragging them off the field when they weren't making any money. I'm wired like that, and I signed a $450 million contract.
Yeah,
I'm screaming at my coach against the Jags. I thought that was one of the coolest moments in sports in a long, long time. On a weak guy where Steve Kerr started Ty Jerome on a back-to-back, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, people paid their hard-earned money to go watch Steph Curry. He does not play in the game, and Kerr's like, shitty part of the business. And the best player in the league, I guess,
Cavs lost.
Playoffs. Cavs lost, but still, it's about the paying customer, and the paying customer is never let down in the NFL because the best players, you got to drag them off the field. Playoffs, I think he might have acted like that in a big game in the regular season. And I'm not trying to shit on, I get it, I guess, in the NBA, but I feel for the guy that bought his ticket to take his son to watch Steph Curry.
Of course, but it's not even close to a comparison. Right.
But the thing that the NFL has that their players have always had is they never say F you to us, the consumer, us on the couch, us at the game. It's like their best. You got to drag them off the field.
Right. But they only get, it's just so different. You only get a game. Like I remember going to baseball games, just Barry didn't play today. That sucked.
Still got to pay.
The media wasn't coming to my defense as an 8-year-old who, I guess I was 13. Barry Bonds just took Sunday off.
Baseball's different.
Where was my protection?
Baseball's different than basketball.
I agree. There's twice as many games.
Baseball's different.
I understand football's different than basketball too.
All we want is for every guy and is just to always play.
Yeah, I know.
For the paying customer. If you can. You break your leg, you can't. I mean,
we don't need all 4 guys out on the same day.
No, well, exactly. It's just
screw you to Dan Gilbert.
I'm just tired of the fans getting so screwed. They pay so much money.
Oh, I agree.
It is just, it's an embarrassment. And what Patrick Mahomes represented the complete opposite. And listen, he's screaming at his head coach. Like he wouldn't come out of the game. He hopped throughout the game to hand off.
On a stretch play.
Run. I kept thinking, like, Andy, can you just have a play where he just has to turn around and hand it off? Maybe they don't even have him. He's like, well, man, we only got 4 plays.
How about he goes under center on his first play? The first play after he got hurt, he goes under center. He also knew he can't lose at home to the Jags. I think that had to be part of it too. They won by 7.
I think it
wasn't as close as that.
But. Can you imagine from the moment you get knocked out of the playoffs, then maybe a couple weeks to just workouts, training, practice, off season, all season? You spend all season and you're like, no way, absolutely cut my ankle off before I tap out now.
It kind of felt
no chance.
He's playing in denial, right?
Yeah.
That's where did not just happen.
You think it's a lock? I don't think it's a lock. Like he might be unable to
Oh.
move.
I don't see how he doesn't play, given that display. Like he is gonna start the game. I don't know if he'll make it through the game, but to me, he is in uniform for that game.
Yeah, I mean,
He might leave the organization if they tell him he can't play. He'll be in one of those like big old casts on the side of his leg, heavily taped. Trey Hendrickson just bearing down on him.
I would say if he has one of these, doesn't take a snap all week, like no practice, plays, wins. I just think his legend. People put him on a pedestal, and it's like he's answered the bell every single time. It's like, yeah, the hype on this guy, maybe he's underrated.
Especially when it's like, well, is Herbert? Maybe could Herbert be as good? Josh Allen is equal. Could Burrow be the best? You know, there's been a lot of that.
At least Burrow's made an argument like, it's just Burrow Mahomes now. Josh, let's got a little ways to go.
Yeah, it ended pretty quickly for Josh. Josh is hitting the links and pretty fast off to the pistachio field, so a little quick. I mean, it's one thing to lose. I think I saw Portnoy tweet this. It's another thing when you just think you're the team and then you just get rolled at home.
Ass kicked.
By the Bengals.
With DeMar Hamlin in the house.
In the snow, and they're the team that looks like they belong. You can lose that game, but to get your ass kicked like that, Burrow is just slicing and dicing you.
Burrow looks sweet. Burrow was better. I mean, way better.
They look cooler. They're in their icy white uniforms.
They look sweet. I kept thinking like, am I supposed to be able to grasp that the Bengals are really cool? And
I don't think so.
But it kind of works.
I know it definitely works because he's so good and they got star players.
The thing with the NFL, man, like the Bengals and the Chiefs shouldn't be able to carry your league, but they kind of can because their star quarterbacks are just rock stars. I mean, Mahomes, he is officially the guy in the NFL, right? I mean, he won his second MVP.
Yeah.
What
Mahomes,
he just
Burrow, Hurts, Purdy. I mean, that's your big four, basically. Those are your final four, John. Think about that. Seriously, think about that. That's the final four. This week, it's Hurts, Purdy, Burrow, Mahomes.
Well, I saw someone tweet out last night, like, I can't believe this really happened. It was Foles, Case Keenum. The final four in 17 was Foles versus Case Keenum and Brady versus Bortles. That was the final four.
Wait.
Brady played Bortles. And remember, the Patriots barely beat him, but they did. And Foles played Case Keenum, and the Eagles killed Minnesota. It was actually the same score as last night. It was 38-7. But that's got to be one of the weirdest Final Four quarterbacks in the modern day 50 years in the NFL, right? I bet if we looked up of all the Bradshaws and Stablers and Montanas and Sims and Aikmans and Youngs to Brady's, the Roethlisbergers, the Mannings, it's even Flacco's and Eli's feel more normal. I mean, it's
Matt Ryan's and Cam Newton's and
I don't even Kaepernick's and Matt.
And Eli, it was Kaepernick and Eli.
Yeah, Russell Wilson. You know, I don't know. I think that's the weirdest. Bortles, Foles, Keenum as three of the four. Like even this one's Joe Burrow's a number one overall pick star. Mahomes is already one of the. If Mahomes' career ends after this game, like if his ankle never worked, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. If you didn't vote for him, you should immediately have your vote revoked. Jalen Hurts is clearly like, do the Eagles have to extend him this off? He's extension eligible. Like, do you pay him this offseason? Just give him a big contract and hopefully get ahead of it? Or do you just wait another year?
Feels like Howie would do it if he could get kind of a deal, right? I don't think they will. Do you think they will?
Well, I mean, are you forced? What if they win the next two games? He's Super Bowl champ.
Yeah, I mean, then you're probably forced to. But I mean, does it feel like they?
I think they like him a lot.
You think they are all in franchise quarterback?
I mean, did you just watch the way he carries himself? I think they like him a lot.
I didn't ask about the guy.
I think they think he's pretty good.
Okay, well then you pay him if you can, and if you're him, you.
But I think, and then we'll get it.
You don't take an early contract discount if you're him.
I think we'll get into it this week, but this is a big moment for the guy.
Yeah.
Because Dak got paid, and I think every time he plays one of these games, like, God damn, is this worth it?
would you say Jalen is unquestionably better than Dak?
Yes.
Like his ceiling clearly is higher, right?
I just think he's a better player in the bigger moments. I mean, Dak, guy, those couple throws today, and I would even throw the Greenlaw. That's really, really bad for a guy that,
Gabador Lenore to just
he just came off what everyone's like, it's the best game he's ever played as a Cowboy. He plays like that. He's a top 5 guy in the league. And then he plays like today.
We didn't talk about it because I didn't see it till after the last pod, but I had a feeling when there were two things I saw the last couple of days that gave me a little bit of confidence for the Niners. One was McCarthy's interview on local radio in Dallas when they said, Mike, you're a 4-point underdog. And Mike said, what? We're the underdog? Like, I don't know if Mike was pretending not to know.
He's got to be pretending, right?
But either way, I thought, all right, bullshit motivation right there. Like just kind of faking the motivation game. And then the other thing was Dak basically saying like, three things. Micah Parsons kind of played the underdog card, which I thought you guys are the Dallas Cowboys. Like, sorry, you don't get to play the underdog. Like no one believes in us. Nobody, they're getting all the love. We don't. And Dak basically saying like every moment since last year against them has been about getting this opportunity again. Like, oh my God, you guys, like, now I'm not saying that's why they lost, but you can't say that and then play like that in that game against that team after you said last year it's been all about that moment. It's going to be hard for the Cowboys to come back from this.
Well, he's already one of the more polarizing players in the league. I think it's going to be a tough offseason for Dakota. Throwing a lot of picks down the stretch of this season. And he makes a ton of money. Because part of it, once you get paid, the standard, the way part of the reason everyone shit on Clayton Kershaw in the playoffs was like, bro, you're supposed to be like a top 5 player of all time. One of the best pitchers we've ever seen. You can't, eventually you just got to go Pedro Martinez and say, get on my back, and he can't. So it's like, I always rooted for Clayton Kershaw, even though I'm supposed to hate the Dodgers. But after a while, it's like, he always just gave up these big home runs. It always happened. And then Verlander gets there. It's like, Mahomes, he's gimping around, throwing touchdowns. Burrow today, it's like, these guys are just born for this shit. I'm watching Dak going, this is who's supposed to be the 49ers?
Lamar's like, you offered me 133 guaranteed. That guy's making one. That was a good day for Lamar. Dak's 126 guaranteed.
I thought he got pure 160 guaranteed.
Oh, was it pure 160? Well,
do you believe Ryan Clark? Because I don't.
133?
No, I don't.
Where that number how does you even arrive at that number?
Well, Lamar told him.
No, I understand. I'm saying, how did they arrive at 133? I saw one of the tweets I saw was like 133. All this after Deshaun got 230. Deshaun is also not that's not the standard for anybody else's contract.
Well, there are going to be a lot of phone calls that like, hey, we're just we're going to make our initial offer, Hurts or whoever throughout the league. We're going to send our original. We look forward to talking to you. This is not our final offer. We just want maybe meet in the middle. It's going to start. Someone's going to start above Deshaun Watson.
You think?
Like Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, if he ever gets representation. 245. Like, how did you get this number? Well, we took Deshaun's last season and we just, bump inflation. Like, what are you? We don't view that as that doesn't exist in our world.
They should reply. The counter offer should be, okay, we'll consider this if in year one you make $1 million. Isn't that what he made this year? Or did he make 10? Whatever he made nothing, right?
Yeah, I think wasn't it one?
One. So all right, 230, but 1 million in year one. You gonna do that deal?
Would you even do that though for anybody in the league besides Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow? Well, honestly, if you're Joe Burrow, wouldn't you just send the Deshaun Watson plus 15 million?
I would do 230 over 10 years.
But Joe Burrow's probably going to get Deshaun Watson. Well, but look at the organization he's in. It's going to be complicated.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to find a way.
I would imagine he gets the Mahomes-y, 10-year, $400 million type deal.
That's what I'm saying. I'd do it for 10 years. I'd give some of these guys a lot of money.
Yeah. Bro's fucking incredible.
Eric Armstead tweeted, they said they wanted who? Weird. Do you feel like Niners-Cowboys added to the rivalry on...
Well, no, because the Niners just kind of keep beating them. Part of getting a rivalry, the Cowboy rivalry happened because the Niners, they got taken out twice and then they beat them. And then they stole Deion Sanders the following year. It doesn't feel like the Niners and Cowboys are, fighting for superiority. Today was close. Today was, in a weird way, closer than last year because the score was. And anytime that you're in a 9-9, 12-9, right, at any moment, or 16-12, a fumble 6, like anytime you're within under 6-5 points, one play can boom. We saw it in the Tyler Huntley play, right? Weird shit can happen in football. A fumble, a pick six, a tip ball, a fumble on a punt. That's why when Ray fumbled the punt, it was like, oh my God, you're going to give them a free touchdown in a game that's not going to be around 30 point, right? This could be the difference in the game, Ray.
Right.
And then Ray came back, he had a 53-yard return.
They held him to a field goal. I mean, that was part of it. It was 9-6, and you held him to a field goal, which honestly should be worth 4 points. If Maher's going to make it, you should give him extra credit.
He did split it.
I saw somebody tweeted like, he can't use his putter, but how do we know his driver's not working? Like he can't hit the extra points, but what about the 45-yarders?
That's why I think Robbie was telling like Trent to back up. Like, bro, you've never been this spot, Trent. You don't understand.
You don't want to win like this, Trent. Not this way. Not like this. I wonder if Robbie felt like there'd somehow I felt like there might be some like weird bad karma, like Robbie just watching it. Like there's some karma, like just some, notice Robbie, they called the timeout. Robbie didn't kick the ball. He just he could have kicked it. Cowboys called a timeout at the end of the first half to kind of ice him. The ball gets snapped. He didn't kick it. I wonder if there's just some weird psychological,
I wonder if you're an older kicker, you're not wasting like your rep.
Then he ran to the sideline though, and kicked into the little net.
You're not giving them a psychological, let you see a make or a miss. Maybe that they're going to need a kicker next year. You're a free agent.
Kicker, and I had all this time to think. If I make the one they iced me on, I'd feel like, oh shit, I used my make. Then if you miss it, you're like, well, that's not good. You just missed.
What if the Niners draft a kicker this year?
Yeah, like Shanahan wants to watch any kicker tape. You think he's trusting the special teams coach to make a kicker draft pick?
I mean, look, the last guy they drafted, Wisnowski, will be on the team as long as Kyle's here, as long as the ball just goes forward, right?
Yeah,
Wisnowski's going to be on the team for a
while.
Yeah, he likes the guy. He must like him in the building. You're on the team as long as I'm here. I bet he's told him that. Just don't fuck up. Don't ever get in trouble. And just work on your kicking, and you'll be here as long as I'm here. I mean, Robbie, it'll be interesting. I don't remember they paid him a couple years ago when they franchise tagged him. I wonder if he would leave. He's still clearly good enough to keep kicking the NFL. But remember, he's always live in the Bay Area, live in Chicago.
Feels like they'd pay the money to keep him. I mean, how could you not if he keeps it up like this?
They would. Is anyone else going to pay him $4 or $5 million like the Niners will be willing to pay him?
Well, Chicago is not going to be in the position to spend a lot of money on a kicker.
No, and why would you? He only makes sense on good teams. That's where him defending that guy, Jerry's like, I like this guy. I can see Jerry be.
Oh, he does make sense on the Cowboys. He'd be
income tax. I could see. I mean, they signed Robbie Gould to a 2-year, $77.2 million. Robbie's been making cash the last couple of years.
Yeah. You think he should get 2 for 10 if they keep this thing rolling?
Robbie made $4 million this year. I can't imagine there's that many kickers beside Tucker, and he's got to be a top 5 kicker in the league on salary this season, would be my guess.
Austin says he made a game-saving tackle tonight. No, it's not true.
It was
back.
It
was a hell of a play.
It was. I give him credit on that one. He threw his ass into the guy. And I guess technically some teams, well, the 49ers in cap dollars were second in the NFL this year for a kicker.
Sammy said, put his body on the line and limped off like a champ.
I honestly, for a split second, I'm like, did he just get hurt? Do you think that too? Did you watch him kind of roll over? It's actually probably pretty genius. He's less likely to wrap up than he is just, this is going to hurt, but fuck it, just throw your 200 pounds into the guy. And it just, that guy, because usually like the body, when you're trying to wrap up, you know, unless you're like Navarro Bowman, if you're a kicker, you're probably not coming that violently. But if you just throw all your body weight in the guy, it's just a collision that just knocked the guy down.
It's dangerous to like try and get, you know, you don't want to get stiff armed. You just want to become a speed bump, basically, is what you're trying to do, is speed bump it.
Yeah, he kind of went, you know, like you would go cannonball into the water, but in the back. Pretty dangerous. I mean, you could probably hurt yourself, you know, break a tailbone or something.
Yeah.
That guy's running fast too. I mean,
luckily he's not, you know, 6'3", 250, right?
That was an underrated, hilarious moment of the game.
And key. Hilarious and key.
I mean, might have saved. Who knows? He might have scored, right?
Might have. I don't think he would have, but might have. There was another point in here, so I wanted to get to. Somebody made. What was it? How about the pregame report from Jay Glazer that D'Amico Ryans had 4 interviews scheduled for Saturday, got through 2 of them, and then canceled the next 2 because he had to get back to work for the Niners. So he canceled. It was the Cardinals. Was it the Broncos? Did he cancel Cardinals Broncos? I feel like he did the Broncos. He canceled Cardinals and somebody else. I can't get over these guys. I'm not blaming. Whatever. It's clearly just the way it is. And I guess maybe there's only so much work you can do to prepare for a game. Once the game plan's put together, the game plan's put together. But I just can't get over these guys. He had 4 interviews scheduled for Saturday.
Well, Jeremy Fowler reported 2 days ago that he had 2 set up for before the game, which sounded insane. And like you said, I don't. These are the dates. That's what Fowler reported on TV, and clearly Glazer. I don't know how it's possible in any line of work. Anyone listening to this, I don't care what you do, to try to have 4 interviews in general in one day, even if it was over Zoom, would be a lot, right? With a bunch of different entities, a bunch of people that you would try to do some research on, while you have, I don't know, the biggest thing of your professional life going on the side. It's a lot. Now, I would say most professions, what makes this a little unique, like if we worked at an enormous company and we were interviewing with other competitors, most people don't tell. They keep that under wraps. This one's it's well known. You're talking about it. So it's not like you're hiding anything from the people you're working with. Like, they all know what's at hand. I just think from a mental capacity to try to do a good job, and clearly D'Amico's a really high level job, it's asking a lot. So when Glazer, because I text you immediately, I was kind of paying attention, and then I kind of look up like, what did he just say? I can understand where you canceled to. Like, I could see him going, I don't have the mental capacity here. We got a team meeting tonight. I'm expending a lot of energy talking to these people. I can't do 2 more of these. If I had to take an educated guess, he texts his agent like, we got to push these back till next week. I can't focus right now.
Yeah.
It would probably be even, I don't care how high level you are. And on the high level scale, D'Amico's fucking like a borderline 10 out of 10. Probably, it felt like the way Glazer, the little bit I got, like, felt overwhelmed. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, or they were taking longer than whatever it was. Rohan said that it came out that whatever that I didn't see that Jeremy Fowler report, but that was not correct.
Maybe where he was wrong is all 4 were scheduled for Saturday.
That would make some sense. I mean, it's insane. But don't all these interviews take 8 hours? I thought that's how long these interviews take. Don't you know ahead of time that you can't schedule 4 of them?
I don't know. Maybe he's not as worried. The one thing I would say D'Amico has going for him is, you never want to say never. I mean, Byron Leftwich went from a guy that was going to be the Jags head coach last year to like he's going to be a quarterback coach. I'd say D'Amico's in a pretty good spot for no matter if it could go off the rails, the guy's going to be a coordinator for a long time and be in the mix. And he's already so highly thought of as a former player and the team captain. And, he's already super rich. I mean, he signed a massive contract as a player. Because I remember Kyle talking about when he asked him to come coach, he's like, well, it's just we don't pay that much of these quality control. You never know a guy that's had a lot of financial success. And once he agreed to do it, the lifestyle changed. Clearly, he's all in on this, and he's a star. So I've said over and over, I don't think he's a lock. One, just you never know the way this stuff plays out. And two, Robert Saleh coaching is the guy's life. That's how he's made all of his money. D'Amico's a multimillionaire right now. Like when you have that, you just have some more firepower to say no. If
also,
things don't feel right.
Also, if you like the job you have.
Well, I watched John Lynch today.
If he was Belichick's DC, would he be more likely to just like, I got to get a job?
Yeah, I mean,
or just any defensive coach's defensive coordinator.
Yeah, probably. But sometimes, like Ben Johnson pulled his name out of all these, the Detroit guy. And who knows? Maybe he was a quick riser in his mid to late 30s. He was no lock to get a job either. But maybe he's like, I got a pretty good deal going. I like being here. They're going to give me $3 million a year, extend my contract. I like it. Some of these coaches, once they get to making a lot of money, D'Amico makes a lot now too, probably $2 or $3 million. What if you like where your kids are going to school? What if your wife has a bunch of close friends? Like I saw the face of John Lynch. John Lynch was offered so much goddamn money to sit next to Al last year. And I bet he would tell you the high I get on these playoff games is I never would have sniffed it for the $20 million I would have got calling Titans Jags in week 5.
I think you're right. He had to have at some point during the year, especially once they're just watching Thursday Night Football thinking, okay, I made the right decision. But then also as Brock Purdy's rattling off his part of a 12-game winning streak to go back to the NFC Championship game for the second year in a row in Philadelphia. The high that John Lynch is that must be on during every game, right? And part of that was he had the experience of doing television before, right? Like if he hadn't done TV before, maybe it would have been harder for him to say no. But maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Like you said, he's got enough money to get through his life and his children's lives. Doesn't mean money doesn't matter. Like, so does Matt Ryan. I'm not telling Matt Ryan he should retire and walk away from the $29 million in cash that the Colts owe him next year. It's still a lot of money. Because that's what I was thinking today when you texted me. You said Matt Ryan was on TV. I'm like, well, all Matt's got to do is grit it out for like 10 more months, and he's got another $29 million in his bank account. So I don't blame him if even as a rich guy, he waits a little longer to totally shut it down. But maybe having the experience, maybe McVay talked to John Lynch when he considered walking away. I'm sure D'Amico has. Now, D'Amico's not talking about TV. D'Amico's talking about being a head coach. But you remember Kyle's whole story before he took the Niners job was he was not going to just take a job. He was probably not going to take the Niners job. Shanahan had said that at the past, right? That he went and interviewed for the Niners job. And he was thinking like, I may just not take any of these jobs. Kind of all the jobs kind of suck.
Well, remember they were trying to like have all the GMs become friends with them that they were interviewing too. And Kyle's like, this is weird. I don't know any of these guys.
Yeah.
Can I just bring my own GM? They're like, yeah, fuck it. Send John Lynch to Santa Clara. We'll talk to him. He's like, shit, I'll take the job.
Yeah. But, I'm sure Kyle said that to him. Like, hey, man, I took this job because after I interviewed, I felt like I was going to get everything I need. If you're not getting the job offered you that you think you're going to get everything you need, like you're coaching the number 1 defense this year, you'll get another shot. Like you are D'Amico Ryans. You will get another shot.
Look at Ed Reed.
Did he get another job?
No, he quit his job.
I know. See that? Bethune-Cookman. He walked away because they didn't give him everything.
He had been on the job for 26 days.
But he hadn't signed the contract.
Yeah, he thought they would ratify it or change some language in it, and they refused.
They had promised him, I guess, some things for player support or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what exactly that means, but yeah. That one sucks. I
agree. He gave a pretty good speech. You click on that? Just talking a bunch of shit about the administration.
Ed Reed? No, I
to the
saw a
players.
clip. Somehow there was like a FaceTime of him in Prime, but like, did you see that?
No.
It was a, I think it's what it was a FaceTime. Prime was telling him, like, I know you care about the guys. Like, this sucks. But like, Ed was behind the podium in the meeting room, and Prime was just like on his phone. I didn't quite understand what was going on there. But yeah. Anyway, the point is, D'Amico doesn't have to take any of these jobs, although it feels like he's going to get offered multiple jobs. How does he not get offered a job if he goes and beats the Eagles next week?
I mean, well, the Eagles guys are all interviewing too. So, I mean, but we saw before, remember, Stefanski got the job and Solid didn't. The Browns. You know, I think sometimes that they don't put in much in the individual games.
How do you feel about the Niners-Eagles game being the early game this week?
This is the one that rotates.
Yeah. So the Niners-Eagles is at 12, and Bengals-Chiefs is at 3:30.
That sucks. We'll have to figure that one out.
It sucks for streaming purposes, is what John is saying there. Yeah. Anything else from this game we got to empty the tank on?
Big week.
Big week.
Eagles, baby.
Who would have thought?
Me. No, I didn't. Not when Jimmy went down, but fuck, we're here.
It's the 1 seed versus the 2 seed. It's the 1 seed versus the 2 seed. This is when the playoffs started. This is the game you're supposed to get.
Yeah. I think the Final Four is right. The other is 1 versus 3, and it turns out Bengals are better than Bills.
I agree.
So it's like the 4 best teams are here.
Well, yeah. Why is the chat? The chat's been talking about Javon Kinlaw a lot tonight.
I don't know.
Didn't make enough plays.
I didn't even notice them today.
Diameter Lenore, Devontae Smith, Mooney Ward, AJ Brown. How about AJ Brown held out, gets in this game against Debo, who didn't hold out, but did anyway.
Held in, remember? He
held in.
He showed up. Remember, he didn't.
So those two got 2 of the big offseason stories. Those 2 guys. Jalen Hurts, big offseason story. Him. Devontae Smith, huge draft story in the game. Christian McCaffrey, biggest trade of the season. I guess of the season. Russell Wilson getting traded before the season, probably bigger. But in the game, Brock Purdy, the last pick in the draft. No quarterback drafted last has ever started an NFL game, and he's starting the NFC Championship game. I mean, it's just
Kyle versus Sirianni. I mean, I think the coaching matchup.
Yeah, how many NFC Championships combined have these two now been in the last 6 years? 4? Just
Eagles has been in 2. The
third
Foles
for the
won
Niners.
this one, and 3rd for the Niners. Yeah,
So 5 in the last 5 years.
17. So
17 season
longer ago. Yeah,
I mean, like kind of we talk about just primo matchups. We've gotten the Cowboys a few times now. We've gotten a lot of the Rams. Obviously, historically, a lot of the Seahawks. This is a pretty primo, like just a couple of teams. I mean, I guess they weren't quite sweet at the exact same time, but the Eagles got sweet post Niners dynasty. Into the Niners were still pretty good, kind of mooch Jeff Garcia years, and the Eagles got really good.
It's gonna be sweet.
Just incredible. All right, thanks for hanging with us, everybody. Hit that like button, subscribe on the way out the door. If you're watching the stream, podcast down in the description below. Ricky Waters Bowl. For who?
Jeff Garcia too.
Jeff Garcia. Yeah,
Started
Jeff
for
Garcia
Eagles.
Bowl. T.O. Bowl.
T.O. Bowl. Bill Romanowski.
Romo Bowl. Anybody else? I'm sure.
I don't know.
3, 2, 1. All right, that's it. That's all we came up with this time around. Greg Papa Bowl. Let everybody. Kwasky Tart Bowl?
I don't think Kwasi's on. I think he got cut.
Trey Sermon Bowl?
Inactive. He's on the Eagles.
Chat coming through. Torrey Smith Bowl.
Torrey Smith.
Charlie Garner Bowl. Guy McIntyre?
before my time.
Guy McIntyre, come on. Neck roll? Oh, and double helmet. All right. On that note, thanks for hanging, everybody. Later.
Peace.